Chapter 662. The tranquil surface of the lake reflected the pitch-black curtain of night. Thick, hazy fog curled up, and clouds curled up in spirals. Bufong was fishing quietly. He held the fishing rod with one hand, steady like an immovable mountain. Ripples spread out where the fish hook landed, like ripples on a bluish-green wave. Tap, tap, tap. Ripples came from the surroundings and broke the tranquility of the lake. The ripples collided with each other and splashed out, instantly causing the lake to be in disorder. Bufong slightly opened his eyes. The feeling of being as immovable as a mountain had been broken, and the hook was swaying slightly. Around him, silhouettes slowly emerged from the thick fog and surrounded him. Drip-tap, the quiet sound of a drop of water falling on the surface of the lake. A woman wearing a blue dress flew over. She was like a peerless immortal with a beautiful face and an extraordinary aura. She looked at Bufong, her eyes indifferent. This time, who can save you? In the center of the sunset lake. You can't escape even if you have wings, said Lanji. Humph. Bufong was still fishing quietly. The dark clouds in the sky scattered, revealing a clear sky. Although it was pitch black, he could see the twinkling stars. Tap, tap, tap. The shadows slowly walked. The sound of their feet stepping on the water arose unceasingly, breaking the rare silence. They were four gigantic guards clad in golden armor. The auras of these guards were incomparably terrifying, and each of them carried a gigantic weapon on their backs. Their weapons were also gold, as if they were made of pure gold, releasing a cold aura. Each of them had a sneer on the corner of their mouths as they stared at Bufong with a playful look on their faces. It would be troublesome to kill this little chef. He had killed his way from the Gluttony God City to the center of the Sunset Lake. This kid could really jump around. The most important thing was this kid was lucky to have the help of some noble people. Whether it was Ouyang Chenfeng or Wunren Shang, they were first-grade chefs in the Valley of Gluttony. Not only were they good at cooking, but their fighting abilities were also intimidating. Since these existences were helping Bufong, they couldn't do anything. Even if they did, they weren't sure if they could kill Bufong. Therefore, they had been looking for opportunities. This time, he finally found an opportunity. This kid actually foolishly ran to the Sunset Lake alone. The Sunset Lake was dangerous to begin with, but this guy actually came here alone. Wasn't he courting death? Look at the things in his hands. Lan Ji and the others almost doubted this kid's IQ. He came to the Sunset Lake to fish. Wasn't it funny? Fishing in the center of the Sunset Lake? Not to mention them. Even many first-grade chefs didn't dare to do this. Where did this brat get the courage to fish in the Sunset Lake? Since no terrifying spirit beasts had appeared yet, he had to quickly kill this brat. The few of them looked at each other and seemed to understand each other's thoughts. In the next moment, a gust of wind blew across the entire lake. Every guard wearing golden armor took out the weapons on their backs and waved them. Suddenly, a suppressive gust of wind whistled, and a terrifying wave of air whistled toward Bufong. The surface of the lake began to undulate like a cracked mirror, fluctuating greatly. The small boat in the middle of the lake couldn't help but shake, bobbing up and down. Bufong stood up on the small boat, looking as steady as a mountain. His eyes gazed into the distance, looking at Lan Ji in her blue dress. Lan Ji's eyes were still indifferent and otherworldly. The Saint Sun has ordered us to take your head as an offering to Lu Ji, so you can die in peace. Lan Ji said faintly. As soon as she said that, the golden armor guards took action. The water splashed on the lake's surface rumblingly as they stepped on it. A terrifying aura expanded unceasingly. Bufong furrowed his brows. Black smoke diffused. The black turtle constellation walk floated above his palm, spinning unceasingly in his palm, radiating radiance. It's just a black walk. See if I don't smash your black walk. A golden armor guard holding a giant golden axe stepped out. His muscles bulged like a horned dragon. The golden axe bloomed with the ultimate radiance, slashing toward the black turtle constellation walk. The axe, which seemed to be able to split the sky, violently pounded on the black turtle constellation walk. Boom! After a loud explosion, the entire area around the center of the collision exploded. The lake water shot up into the sky, splashing down. The black turtle constellation walk flew out and landed on top of Bu Fong's palm. A huge force spread out, causing the small boat to be pushed far away by this huge force. The golden armor guard's lips trembled as he held the golden axe. He had used all of his power with this axe, but he couldn't smash that kid's black wok. Was it really a wok? The space between his thumb and forefinger felt numb. If it weren't for the true energy in his body continuously nourishing the area, he wouldn't have been able to hold the axe. Swish! The fishing rod trembled, and the spirit beast tendon suddenly tightened at this moment. The golden armor guards, who wanted to take action, felt a chill run down their spines when they saw that scene. They took in a breath of cold air, vigilantly looking at the fishing rod. Although they said that Bu Fong was a fool in the center of the Sunset Lake, if that kid caught some terrifying spirit beast, it wouldn't be safe for the Valley of Gluttony. Bu Fong's heart thumped, and his eyes lit up. The fish took the bait. Will it be the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish? The corners of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. He was looking forward to it. A moment later, his hand was filled with true energy as he exerted his strength. Even Lan Ji's eyes were attracted by Bu Fong's movements. She couldn't help but look at him. The Gluttony God City was brightly lit. The enormous Gluttony Gods building was grand and luxurious. On the Gluttony Gods building square, people on the floating platforms were gawking, looking at an old man wearing a loose robe standing in the middle of the square. This old man had white hair and eyebrows. His body carried a terrifying aura that made people shiver. However, no one could feel his existence. It was really mysterious. The old man clasped his hands, slowly walking on the arena. While he was walking, his ear-splitting voice, which was like the evening drum or morning bell, lingered on the entire square. Everyone sat up straight and listened to the voice seriously. The voice that lingered in their ears seemed to contain some great Tao, causing some people to involuntarily sink into contemplation. Whether it was the saints' sons or the saintesses of the Holy Lands, they all admired this old man. It wasn't because of anything else but his identity. He was the great elder of the Valley of Gluttony, Chu Changsheng. This was a rather legendary elder who had many glorious achievements. Many saints' sons and daughters of the Holy Lands of the Hidden Dragon Royal Court knew about this old man. That was why they respected him. The old man had a stooped back, looking senile. Many people sighed when they saw him. Even the peerless expert had a time when he was past his prime. That kind of appearance made the saints' sons and saintesses, who were full of vigor and vitality, feel a little sad. Even the arrogant Heavenly Springs saint's son had to show his respect when facing Chu Changsheng. He flicked his sleeves and stood up to show his respect. I'm so glad that you can come to the Valley of Gluttony. The Glutton God's Banquet is coming soon. I hope that you can find your favorite dishes in the Valley of Gluttony. After Chu Changsheng finished his lecture, he announced the start of the banquet. Immediately, women wearing chef robes slowly flew up from the Gluttony Gods building. Those women had long hair, which fluttered in the wind. They looked otherworldly like fairies, and each of them wore a perfect smile. Fragrant dishes floated out and landed on everyone's table, attracting the gazes of countless people. Some dishes were emitting icy blue air, while others were emitting colorful lights as if they were blooming. In short, those dishes were trying their best to show off their cool colors in the dark to attract people's gazes. On each platform, a waitress wearing a chef robe descended, explaining the origin of each dish, the cooking techniques, as well as the heat control needed to cook, which aroused the interest of many experts. Some dishes had unique ways to eat, so of course they needed to be explained. For a moment, the entire Gluttony Gods building's square fell into a peaceful state. The thick aroma of the dishes lingered, and the tinkling of the zither echoed. There was also a woman's voice, which was as sweet as the chirping of an oriole in an empty valley. On a separate platform, a graceful figure was playing the zither. The misty rain filled the air, and the sound of the zither could always make people drunk. The platform that Xiao Yu was sitting on belonged to him. On his platform, the little girl, Xiao Yu, was curiously poking her head out. The corners of her mouth were drooling as she stared at the delicious dishes on the table. Eat. Owner Bu asked me to take care of you. Of course, I have to let you eat well. Eat as many dishes as you want. Of course, you can't drink any wine. Xiao Yu rubbed Xiao Ye's head, his voice hoarse as he said with a smile. He pushed a plate filled with steaming hot dishes in front of the little girl. The aroma assailed her nostrils, and the little girl couldn't help but gulp. Shortly after, the little girl tasted the food, and she couldn't control herself anymore. She started to gobble up the food. Xiao Yu's face was calm at first. How much could a little girl eat? However, the calm expression on his face froze shortly after. Under his incredulous gaze, Xiao Yu seemed to have turned into a bottomless pit as she gobbled up all the dishes on the table. That speed, it was so fast that it made him break out in a cold sweat. However, after pulling himself together, Xiao Yu couldn't help but laugh out loud. Being able to eat was a blessing. Thus, he ordered the woman in the chef's robe to serve more dishes. In the glutton god's banquet, there was an endless supply of dishes. As long as you could eat more, you could order more. This was the consensus of the glutton god's banquet. However, not many people would order too much because the glutton god's banquet's dishes weren't ordinary. They were all filled with spirit energy, and if one absorbed too much spirit energy, they would explode. The woman in the chef's robe didn't mind. She flew away, and shortly after, she came back with more dishes. However, shortly after, Xiao Yu and the woman in the chef's robe stiffened. That was because the little girl had gobbled up all the new dishes. Xiao Yu couldn't help but laugh heartily. As expected, how could the people around Owner Bu not have any special traits? Xiao Yu could not help but laugh heartily. Sure enough, how could the people around Owner Bu not have something special about them? Xiao Yu couldn't help but laugh heartily. As expected, how could the people around Owner Bu not have any special traits? Today, he wanted to see how much this little girl could eat. Anyway, this was the glutton god's banquet. She could eat as much as she wanted. He didn't believe that this little girl could eat her way to the sky. Continue to serve the dishes. Let this little girl eat her fill. Ha ha ha. Xiao Yu said to the woman in the chef's robe. After saying that, he picked up the wine on the table and took a big gulp, laughing heartily. Chapter 663. Rumble. The spirit beast's tendons suddenly stretched taut. In that instant, the radiance on them circulated. Terrifying energy was contained within, as though it was about to explode. Bu Fang's eyes brightened. He took a deep breath, then stomped hard on the small boat. The small boat was almost overturned by the enormous force. The surrounding golden armor guards didn't make a move. Instead, they stood in the distance, squinting to see what kind of spirit beast Bu Fang was fishing. Judging from the fluctuations, this spirit beast was definitely not a small one. Just from the scene it was creating, it was clear that this spirit beast wasn't ordinary. The fishing rod, which was made of wood, was completely crushed by this enormous force. It seemed as though it would break at any moment. Bu Fang's eyes focused. The power in his arms suddenly exploded. He gathered his strength, grabbed the fishing rod with both hands, and threw it up into the sky. However, it was still indifferent. The originally calm lake also changed at this moment. The entire Sunset Lake seemed to be boiling at this moment. There seemed to be a terrifying giant swimming in the Sunset Lake. However, because it was too big, Bu Fang and the others standing on it didn't notice it. Swoosh! The lake water swayed. Bu Fang's eyes focused. He took a step forward, and suddenly, his figure seemed to step on the air, ascending to the sky step by step. The power in his hands also increased. This fish is really strong. Bu Fang frowned and muttered. A moment later, his will moved, and a vigorous beef meatball floated out of the system's dimensional storage. This beef meatball slowly floated under the control of Bu Fang's mental force. It flew in front of Bu Fang, and Bu Fang bit it. The oil splashed, and the scalding heat filled the air. It seemed to make a sizzling sound. With a gulp, the vigorous beef meatball entered his mouth. Bu Fang felt a wave of heat flow into his arm, which increased the strength of his arm. A moment later, Under the shocked gazes of the golden armor guards and the blue-clothed lady, the spirit beast in the lake was gradually exposed. Boom! The water splashed, and a huge black shadow was fished out from within. The lady in blue and the golden armor guards watched as the huge fish-type spirit beast flew past them, with its fins spread out and water splashed everywhere. Everyone was a little sluggish. By the time they came back to their senses, the gigantic spiritual beast had already crashed into the lake once again, causing a huge splash and causing the entire lake to churn endlessly. A roar came from the fish-type spirit beast. The entire sky seemed to have darkened as the gigantic spiritual beast soared in the sky and leaped into the air, causing everyone to be extremely shocked. What fish is this? It seems very scary. Some people recognized the fish, but they didn't dare to confirm it. It had been many years since someone had provoked the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. Boom! The heaven-swallowing fish smashed into the boat, causing it to crack. Bufong's figure walked on the huge waves. This lunatic, he's fishing for the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish in the Sunset Lake. Lanji finally remembered what that giant spirit beast was. It was the brutal spirit beast of the Sunset Lake, the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. Moreover, this heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish was too big. Its extended body was several meters long, and its sharp teeth shone with a sharp, cold light under the starlight. No wonder why Bufong had thought that this spirit beast could be so strong. It turned out that the fish he had just caught was such a giant creature. The small boat was smashed. Bufong's body stepped on the air, and he suddenly landed. Both of his legs stepped on the lake's surface. With a splash, he stepped into the water, pulling the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish and dashing crazily. The fish roared unceasingly as it was pulled. The golden armored guards exchanged looks. Lanji's face was a little cold. Kill! Don't look at him! The heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish is here. We must finish this quickly. Lanji shouted. An icy aura spread from her body, and the lake beneath her feet froze. Lanji flicked her fingers. Instantly, the lake water splashed. Columns of water shot out as if they wanted to pierce through the void. There was a cracking sound. The cold air surged, and the water column was frozen into an icicle. The icicles whistled through the air and shot toward Bufong with a tearing sound. Bufong glanced at the icicle, furrowed his brows, and flipped his body. Instantly, the icicle sizzled, sinking into the giant heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. The heaven-swallowing fish was enraged. It opened its fins, and the rumbling sounds echoed unceasingly. A roar echoed. The spirit beast tendons that had been resisting for a long time finally cracked. Bufong's figure was sent flying by a tremendous force. His body tumbled in the air and landed on the surface of the lake. He was thrown far away, the lake water churning around his legs. Bufong frowned. This kind of spirit beast tendons couldn't endure it. Crack! 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 The spirit beast tendons were broken, and the wooden fishing rod couldn't support it anymore. The heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish opened its mouth and crushed it. Kill him. Lanji's attack failed. Her face was cold, and her hair fluttered. She pointed at Bufong and shouted. The golden armor guards let out a sonorous roar. Immediately, four golden figures sprinted on the surface of the lake toward Bufong's location. The weapons in their hands danced, creating waves of energy. The heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish was enraged. It opened its fins and mouth, shooting out water cannons everywhere. The water cannons hit the water surface and exploded. Water splashed everywhere, and the lake surged. Its power was terrifying. Bufong's figure walked on the undulating surface of the lake. The golden armor guards with surging auras became the target of the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. The heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish swam, aiming at the four of them. The four golden armor guards gawked. They weren't the ones who caught it. Why did the fish come for them? However, the golden armor guards were the strongest force under the heavenly springs Saint Sun. Although there were only a few of them, their fighting capacity was enough to shock people. Boom, boom, boom. Explosions echoed. The four golden armor guards and the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish were fighting fiercely. Lan Ji floated on the water surface, her cold eyes gazing at Bu Fong in the distance. Of course, she wouldn't let this kid escape again. Thus she moved. His sleeves fluttered in the wind as his feet stomped on the surface of the lake, causing the surface of the lake to freeze. She dashed towards Bu Fong. Her purpose was simple. She wanted to kill Bu Fong and take his head to avenge Lu Ji. Bu Fong glanced at the woman from the corner of his eyes. He could feel her overwhelming morale. He flipped the dragon bone kitchen knife in his hand and infused it with true energy, causing it to emit a resplendent golden radiance. Blade after blade slashed out, instantly splitting the lake's surface. Overlord 13 blades. Bu Fong indifferently looked at Lan Ji. His hand wielded the knife unceasingly. Flows of knife energy piled up and surged, rumbling and bursting. Bu Fong swallowed a bowl of steaming hot rampage ramen. As he swallowed the ramen, he threw a portion of it into the distance and flicked several vigorous beef meatballs out of his fingers. These dishes floated out and landed on the surface of the lake. They floated in the air steadily. It seemed to have formed a unique intent. Bu Fong was arranging a gourmet array. While he was slashing his knife energy, he seized a chance to run. While running, he shot out the food to create the array. Unknowingly, the gourmet array was completed. At the same time, Bu Fong's aura was slowly rising. Gradually, it reached the peak. Although Bu Fong's cultivation base was still at the divine physique echelon realm, which had only broken one shackle of the Supreme Being realm, the energy gathered around him was boiling. Even a divine soul realm expert would feel their hearts palpitating. If this energy exploded, even a divine soul realm expert would be skinned alive. The seventh blade. Bu Fong slashed the seventh blade. The oppressive knife energy was so terrifying that the lake seemed to be pressed down a layer. The eighth blade. The energy in Bu Fong's body gathered. A dazzling gold dragon bone kitchen knife appeared on his shoulder. The dragon's might thundered. It was like a gold divine dragon baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, shooting up into the sky. The eighth knife energy seemed to turn into a divine dragon, dashing toward the blue-clothed woman. A terrifying sense of danger shrouded Lan Ji in just a blink of an eye. She had never thought that a divine physique echelon realm expert could burst out such terrifying energy. Was it really the energy a divine physique echelon realm expert could burst out? Far from them. The golden armor guards were suppressing the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. Lan Ji thought that she had to kill this fellow. Thus, she didn't retreat anymore. The pores on her body opened, and thick white smoke gushed out. Lan Ji's body seemed to be covered by a layer of ice. Ice energy continued to condense in front of her, forming an ice shield. Lan Ji wanted to use this ice shield to block Bu Fong's deadly knife energy. After slashing the eighth blade, Bu Fong felt a little empty in his body. All of a sudden, his eyes shrank. He couldn't even stand stably. His body suddenly soared up. Swish! Swish! The lake water flowed from both sides. Bu Fong didn't know when he was standing on solid ground. The gourmet array radiated radiance, covering him and providing him with energy. Lan Ji's ice shield exploded. She wasn't prepared. The saber energy stood on her shield, but her body was lifted up, which made her ice shield unstable. It shattered all of a sudden. Roar! Bu Fong was startled because he found that he wasn't standing on the ground. The heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish and the golden armored guards had finished their battle in the Sunset Lake. They were all looking in Bu Fong's direction. The golden armored guards' bodies were trembling. The heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish rolled its eyes. It opened its fins, planning to run away. However, as soon as it turned around, a sharp tongue shot out. In just a blink of an eye, it pierced through the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish's body. Swish! The heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish was pulled up, swallowed by a giant beast. The golden armored guards were dumbstruck, their bodies shivering. Lan Ji sat on the spirit beast's body. She swallowed her saliva, her heart shivering. Bu Fong stooped, leaning on the spirit beast's body. He took a deep breath. Just what kind of monster was this black mass of behemoths? Bu Fong was really innocent. He just wanted to fish for a heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. Who would have thought that such a monster would appear? Buzz! A loud sound echoed. Everyone felt their bodies tremble. In the next moment, Bu Fong felt his body being pushed up by a column of water. His body was thrown high up into the air, and he spun in the air. High in the sky, he finally saw the spirit beast's appearance. Instantly, Bu Fong couldn't help but take a deep breath. What a big alligator! Lan Ji's legs were jelly, her face pale. It's the green-teeth ancestral alligator in the Sunset Lake. Chapter 664. The ferocious scales were pitch black and deep. Under the moonlight, they sparkled brilliantly as if countless wisps of spirit energy were congregating inside. The sharp fangs were as resplendent as jade. When they opened, a ferocious aura circulated on them. As they opened and closed, it seemed as though space itself was about to collapse. It was a spirit beast that looked like a crocodile. Bu Fong was pushed into the sky by a column of water. He saw the enormous spirit beast's terrifying body, which almost covered the entire area. Its swaying tail was like an incomparably sharp, long knife, and when it swept across, it seemed like the void was about to be cut open. Bu Fong's hair stood on end. It was the first time he felt so cold. Lan Ji was petrified. She slumped on the ground, her soft body shivering. Green-tooth ancestral alligator. It was a terrifying beast that was recorded in the ancient books. It was said that the first valley master of the Valley of Gluttony had sealed it in the Sunset Lake. After so many years, this beast had appeared one more time. The Sunset Lake was so deep that one couldn't see the bottom. Rumor said that there was a spirit beast that was even stronger than this ancestral alligator. However, no one had ever seen it. This time, they had encountered the ancestral alligator. Lan Ji felt like she was suffocating. Her entire body became stiff. She didn't dare to move. She was afraid that the ancestral alligator would attack her all of a sudden. With the ancestral alligator's terrifying power, it was as easy as flipping its hand to kill her. The golden armor guards were dumbstruck. They couldn't believe their eyes, looking at the ancestral alligator that was bigger than them. They shivered. His body, which was wrapped in golden armor, trembled incessantly, causing the golden armor to collide with each other and produce clanging sounds. Boom! All of a sudden, the ancestral alligator opened its mouth. Its big mouth seemed to want to swallow the entire sky. At that moment, even the wind and clouds changed colors. The terrifying aura attacked them in just a blink of an eye. The golden armor guards were scared out of their wits. It was the ancestral alligator, not the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. The four of them could deal with the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish, but facing the green-tooth ancestral alligator, they couldn't do anything. They didn't know whether they could run away or not. They felt their limbs stiffen, and it was difficult for them to move. Thump! Suddenly, a golden armor guard's body went limp. The true energy under his feet was disrupted, and he sank directly into the lake. His face was full of terror as he struggled in the water. His soul was about to be scared out of his wits. He turned around and swam towards the distance. He wanted to escape for his life. Hua-la-la. The sound of water was so clear in the dark night that it would make one's hair stand on end. When the remaining 3 golden armor guards saw this scene, their pupils shrank. Without the slightest hesitation, the 3 of them instantly dashed out, stepping on the surface of the lake and madly sprinting towards the shore. However, the more they ran, the more their hearts sank. Despair filled their hearts. This was the center of the lake. It was too far from the shore. The gushing water column disappeared. Bu Fong's figure fell from the void, smashing hard on the ancestral alligator's head. Boom! Lan Ji was dumbstruck. Bu Fong expressionlessly stood up from the ancestral alligator's head, patted his vermilion robe, and gently exhaled. Boom! The ancestral alligator's body shook hard. A moment later, the four golden armor guards running crazily were bewildered. They found that the ancestral alligator had started to swim, slowly approaching them. The ancestral alligator's eyes were like lanterns hanging high, as if it was looking at food. The golden armor guards wanted to cry, could not look at them like that. They were so flustered. Huala la! The water instantly boiled, and in the next moment, with a loud bang, the huge mouth that blotted out the sky suddenly pounced towards the four golden armor guards. The four golden armor guards were so scared that they wanted to cry. Their aura burst out. True energy columns shot up into the sky, and a soul ladder emerged above their heads. However, their actions were useless. They didn't make the ancestral alligator hesitate. It bit down. The pillar of true energy shattered, and the four golden armored guards were directly swallowed in a single gulp. One of them wanted to run away, but the teeth closed and crushed him, turning him into a pile of minced meat. Crunch! Crunch! The ancestral alligator slowly chewed. The sound of bones rubbing against each other made Lan Ji, who was struggling to stand up on its back, soften again. Bu Fong thought he should run away. With his current competence, he wasn't a match for this giant monster. Even if he had the dragon bone kitchen knife, he didn't have any hope. Although the dragon bone kitchen knife could subdue the spirit beast. Anyway, this giant alligator in front of him was a little abnormal. However, looking at the alligator's meat, which was so full of spirit energy, Bu Fong suddenly had an urge to cut a piece of meat and cook it. Slowly taking a step, Bu Fong walked on the alligator's back. Under the hard scales was the meat, which was full of spirit energy. Bu Fong reached out his hand to pat the scales. The cold feeling made Bu Fong feel as if his hand was going to be frozen. So cold. The vermilion robe fluttered, releasing a flow of warmth. It flowed through Bu Fong's palm, which made his stiff hand move. After moving, the corners of Bu Fong's mouth rose. A moment later, green smoke twirled around his palm, and the dragon bone kitchen knife fell into his hand. The ancient, black dragon bone kitchen knife glowed weakly in the dark night. Bu Fong twirled the knife, holding it in his hand. From a distance, Lan Ji was bewildered, looking at Bu Fong, who was holding the knife with an excited face. What did he want to do? Was he crazy? What did he want to do with that knife? That lunatic, that pervert. Lan Ji felt her hair stand on end as she watched Bu Fong slowly swing the knife toward the ancestral alligator's meat. The disbelief in her eyes almost jumped out. She was frightened. A moment later, she turned around and ran. While running, she cursed under her breath. That lunatic wants to eat the ancestral alligator's meat. Lan Ji wasn't as elegant and calm as before. At this moment, in her eyes, Bu Fong was a synonym for lunatic. Who dared to provoke the ancestral alligator? Who dared to covet the ancestral alligator's meat? Did ordinary people dare to covet it? This little chef hadn't even reached the divine soul realm. He dared to wave his knife at the ancestral alligator's meat. He wanted to covet it. I heard that the alligator's meat is really disgusting. However, this big piece of meat has abundant spirit energy. It should taste good. Swish! Bu Fong believed in the sharpness of the dragon bone kitchen knife. As he slashed, the ancestral alligator's scales were cut. As soon as the scales were peeled off, Bu Fong wielded the knife. True energy filled the dragon bone kitchen knife. Instantly, the dragon bone kitchen knife bloomed with dazzling gold light, as if a divine dragon was moving and winding on it. A moment later, Bu Fong stabbed the shining gold knife into the ancestral alligator's meat. The ancestral alligator, which was chewing, went stiff. It was like the calm before the storm. Lan Ji covered her mouth. She was about to go crazy. Bu Fong was really a lunatic. A moment later, the ancestral alligator seemed to feel pain. Its eyes shrank, and it opened its mouth, roaring. That roar stirred up the entire lake. Waves shot up to the sky. Lan Ji couldn't stand firm on the ancestral alligator's back, falling into the water. However, her body flipped, stepping on the surface of the lake. Her blue dress fluttered as she dashed away. At this moment, she had only one thought in her head: to run away. She had to run away from this nightmarish place. Swoosh! Blood splashed. Bufong dug a big piece of meat from the back of the alligator. That piece of meat was sparkling with moving lines. Spirit energy seemed to condense into a real substance, moving on its surface. Good meat, Bufong complimented, then put away that piece of meat. All of a sudden, Bufong felt the alligator's body shake hard. Bufong's body was shaken, and he was sent flying, falling on the lake. Two massive eyes gazed at him, which were as sharp as a peerless saber. The ancestral alligator roared angrily at Bufong. The terrifying whistling sound caused the water on the surface of the lake to be blown into monstrous waves. Lanji, who was running crazily, was pushed back by the waves. She fell by Bufong. Seeing Bufong, Lanji screamed. She didn't say anything, continuing to run. However, this time, she couldn't run away. After the ancestral alligator roared, it was enraged. Its claws slapped, and the lake water exploded. The two ants in front of it dared to move around on its back. They didn't want to live. Hot air spurted from its mouth. Lanji shivered. She had barely dodged that claw. His entire person was almost petrified with fear. Bufong's figure moved to the side, dodging the claw. If he got hit, even if they were on the lake, the ancestral alligator would smash him into meat paste. Rumble, rumble, rumble. However, the ancestral alligator seemed to be crazy. It continuously slapped its claws. Lanji dodged several claws, gasping for a breath. Her true energy was exhausted. She was desperate. A moment later, a black curtain covered her head. She lifted her head, looking at the giant, ferocious claw that covered the sky. Her face was dull. Boom! Waves shot up into the sky, accompanied by blood. A piece of thick blue cloth floated in the air and flowed along with the water. The maid of the heavenly springs, Saint's son, Lanji, was dead. Bufong wore the vermilion robe. In the dark night, he looked like a twinkling lamp. The vermilion robe adjusted Bufong's aura. After several dodges, Bufong could only gasp for his breath. A terrifying pressure was generated. The water under Bufong's feet was blown away. Bufong's mind flickered. He dashed forward. The giant claw fell, and the lake water splashed. Rumbling sounds rang out as water splashed into the sky. Spirit beasts and fishes rushed out of the lake, pouncing toward Bufong as if they had gone mad. Bufong frowned. He rose his hand, and the dragon bone kitchen knife emerged. He slashed, piercing through the two fish. Aren't they the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish? Bufong looked at the two little spirit beasts skewered by the golden dragon bone kitchen knife and exclaimed in surprise. They seemed somewhat familiar. All of a sudden, a moment later, a gust of wind howled by him. Bufong had goosebumps all over his body. He felt his mind shiver. With a loud bang, a huge force acted on his body, and he was sent flying. It turned out that the ancestral alligator had swung its tail, hitting him. The vermilion robe glowed with a red halo. A layer of energy shrouded him, helping Bufong resist the ancestral alligator's fatal strike. The active function of the vermilion robe had an invincible state. It was this invincible state that had saved Bufong this time. If he didn't have this invincible state, Bufong would have been torn into two halves by the ancestral alligator's tail. Turning around, Bufong landed on the lake. He was still a distance away from the ancestral alligator. Apparently, the ancestral alligator's tail had swept him away. Bufong glanced at the ancestral alligator, which was swimming fast on the lake surface. He took a deep breath. Grabbing a heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish, he dashed away. The ancestral alligator opened its mouth, roaring and raising waves to chase after him. Chapter 665. Rumble. Terrifying waves rose, and the entire sunset lake seemed to be stirred up. The terrifying aura diffused, diffusing to the entire world. Bufong ran crazily, running as fast as he could. He had to run. The vermilion robe's invincible ability had been used. If he got hit again, he would be smashed like the Saint Sun's maid, Lan Ji. Thus, Bufang was running fast. His feet stepped on the lake, dashing forward unceasingly. The wind blew, breaking the velvet rope that tied his hair. His hair fluttered. Rumble, rumble. The ancestral alligator opened its mouth, roaring. Its four limbs slid on the water, moving fast. In just a blink of an eye, it was about to catch up with Bufang. Splash! On both sides of Bufang, the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish shot out like arrows, opening their mouths as if they wanted to swallow Bufang. This sunset lake was really intimidating. There were so many spirit beasts. No wonder the Valley of Gluttony's people didn't come to this sunset lake to fish. If they were careless and caught an alligator, they wouldn't even know how they died. Bufang leaped high. A moment later, he got into the water. The ancestral alligator's claw slapped, and the entire lake's surface exploded. Its giant eyes rolled, looking at a far distance. There, water splashed, and a shadow got out of the water. His feet stepped on the lake's surface, running crazily. Roar! It felt that the ant was teasing it, so it was enraged. Bufang got out of the water, and the black turtle constellation Wak emerged. Then, his true energy poured into the Wak. The ancient, pitch-black turtle constellation Wak expanded in the wind, turning into a sky-covering Wak. Thud! Bufang raised the black turtle constellation Wak, pounding on the ancestral alligator's face. The giant ancestral alligator didn't move at all. Its eyeballs moved, murderous aura diffusing everywhere. Bufang pouted his lips. All right, this big guy was too big, hard, and smelly. With a bang, the black turtle constellation Wak dissipated. Bufang grabbed a heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish in each of his hands, running away crazily. A moment later, he stomped on the lake, his entire body swaying. The shore of the lake gradually appeared. Bufang also saw the shore, and his figure sped up again. Boom, boom, boom. The ancestral alligator's claws slapped on the lake, making the entire sunset lake surge. Looking down from above, one could only see a gigantic beast chasing after a small dot. That scene caused everyone to feel suffocated. This big guy is too much. I just took a piece of your flesh. Is there a need to pursue me so relentlessly? Bufang's face darkened as he felt the true qi in his body depleting rapidly. Was he really going to turn into crocodile dung? This was a little awkward. Suddenly, a loud noise rang out, as if something had hit the wall. The entire sunset lake surged with waves. Bufang was bewildered. He turned around to see the ancestral alligator rolling its eyes as it bumped into an invisible wall. A giant symbol emerged in the sky, and lightning whips descended from it. Those lightning whips pounded on the ancestral alligator's body, scorching the ancestral alligator's flesh and blood. The ancestral alligator's claws clung to the invisible wall. Its eyes widened, gazing at Bufang. It opened its mouth full of fangs, revealing a brutal aura. A seal. Bufang looked at the trapped ancestral alligator. He was bewildered. The corners of his mouth rose, and he exhaled in relief inwardly. He lifted his head, looking at the giant ancestral alligator. When the ancestral alligator was hit by the lightning whips, the lightning fire shot out. The ancestral alligator seemed unwilling. It opened its mouth, wanting to swallow Bufang. However, the sunset lake had a seal, which prevented it from leaving. It was enraged. Its tail swung unceasingly, pounding on the invisible wall. Fine cracks appeared on the wall. Although the seal was shaking unceasingly, the ancestral alligator couldn't break it. Bufang cocked his head, looking at the ancestral alligator. He raised his finger, gently touching the void. Don't rush. One day, I will come back to find you. Of course, if your meat is delicious. Bufang said faintly. Then, he turned around and left. The ancestral alligator seemed to understand Bufang's words. The scales on its entire body opened, lifting its head to roar. In his mouth, there was actually energy rapidly gathering. Boom, boom, boom. Bufong was startled. Bufong turned around. He saw the ancestral alligator open its mouth, spurting a beam of furious energy. That beam of light hit the giant symbol hovering in the sky, making the symbol shake. However, the lightning whips still fell, trapping the ancestral alligator. The ancestral alligator attacked for a while, but it didn't work. Then it decided to leave. With a splash, it dove into the water. Huge waves rose. The waves were not obstructed by the array, and they continued to surge toward Bufong. Pushed by the waves, Bufong returned to the shore and jumped down. Only then did he realize that the true energy in his body was completely depleted. Putting the two heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish into the system's dimensional bag, Bufong sat cross-legged at his spot. He took out 2 steaming oyster pancakes, which emitted a fragrant aroma, and wolfed them down. After eating several pieces of oyster pancakes, he felt the true energy in his body recover a lot. His face looked better. It's time to find Wenren-shan. I wonder what kind of delicacy he can make the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. Bufong stood up, patting the mud off his body. He turned to look at the majestic glutton god city. At this moment, the east gradually brightened. Unknowingly, the night had passed. The majestic glutton god city was still brightly lit, its radiance shooting up to the sky. The clamor lingered in people's ears. Xiaoyu held the jug of wine, but he hadn't poured it into his mouth yet. He gawked and dropped his jaw, looking at the little girl who was still eating nonstop. The lady in the chef robe, who was in charge of their table, was frightened. The corners of her mouth shivered. How many times has it been? Is this girl a monster? How could she eat so much? Won't her stomach explode? Won't she explode because of the energy in the food? The lady in the chef robe wore a numb face. She was a little dumbstruck. So many doubts flashed in her head. Although the Glutton God's banquet was said to have an endless supply of food, it was just a saying. Could it really have an endless supply? Throughout the history of the Glutton God's banquet, at most, someone had eaten 3 servings. But today, this little girl had eaten 5 servings, and from her posture, it seemed she would eat until the end of time. Xiaoyu was also bewildered. He thought that this little girl could only eat a lot. He didn't expect that she could eat so much. Was she the reincarnation of a hungry ghost? Was this little girl's original form a pig? After stuffing the last piece of delicious food in her mouth, Xiaoyu happily stacked the clean plates beside her. Then, she turned her head to look at the lady in the chef robe. Her eyes revealed a trace of desire. Don't look at me like that. I'm scared. The lady in the chef robe was so scared that her little heart trembled. This little girl couldn't possibly want to eat more, right? Xiaoyu also blushed with shame. As expected of someone brought by Owner Boo, she could actually eat so much. Go and get another serving. Xiaoyu was helpless, so he could only say to the lady in the chef robe. The lady in the chef robe stared at Xiaoyu. He really let her eat more. He really spoiled this little girl too much. Xiaoyu's heart was filled with joy. She felt that her stomach seemed to be endless. After eating 1 mouthful of food, she wanted to eat a second one. She couldn't stop. Moreover, after eating the food, she could feel her body getting warm. That warm feeling made her want to continue eating. The lady in the chef robe swallowed her saliva. Sweat beaded on her forehead. A moment later, she turned around and flew away, ordering people to serve more dishes. The situation here had attracted many people's attention. Many people looked over curiously. That was because everyone had basically finished eating and no one would continue to order more dishes. However, only Xiaoyu's table was still ordering more dishes. The Grand Baron Sex Master's body was full of muscles, which contained terrifying power. He squinted at Xiaoyu, the corners of his mouth curling up. He didn't expect that this little girl could eat more than him. His Grand Baron sect cultivated his body, so his appetite was astonishing. He didn't expect that there would be someone who could eat more than him in this glutton god's banquet. He couldn't accept it. Little girl, go and get another serving. I want to eat more. The Grand Baron Sex Master said to the lady in the chef robe who was in charge of his table. The lady in the chef robe was bewildered. She nodded and flew away, ordering people to serve more dishes. After a while, The fragrant dishes continued to arrive and were placed on the table. Xiaoya's table was also served. The Grand Baron's sex master squinted at Xiaoya, laughing loudly. He extended his hand, grabbing the radiant dish and shoving it into his mouth. Munch, munch, munch. While eating, the Grand Baron's sex master gazed at Xiaoya as if he was secretly competing with her. Xiaoya also saw that, and so did many others. They all felt a little strange. Little girl, kill him. Let him know who can eat the most. Xiaoya didn't have a good face for the Grand Baron's sect. It should be known that when the Grand Baron's sex experts came to the southern region, they considered the southern region a training ground. They treated the forces in the southern region like ants. If Xiaoyu hadn't gone through so many hardships, his temper would have been much better. Seeing the Grand Baron's sex master, he would use his sword to greet him. Now that the Grand Baron's sex master had delivered himself to his door, he would let this little girl slap his face. Xiaoyu trusted her because she was Owner Bu's woman. The little lass looked at the table full of dishes, and her mouth started to salivate again. She couldn't wait to pick up a plate, open her mouth, and pour the food in her mouth. That ferociousness caused quite a few people to exclaim in surprise. The Grand Baron's sex master rolled his eyes. How could this little girl be so domineering? Thud! The Grand Baron's sex master smashed the spirit beast leg in his hand on the table. Then he picked up another plate and poured the food into his mouth. He didn't believe that he, the Grand Baron's sex master, couldn't eat a little girl. He wanted to prove who the hell had the biggest appetite. After pouring 2 plates into his mouth, the Grand Baron's sex master's nostrils flared, panting. His mouth was stuffed and oil splashed everywhere. He tried to chew, his brows furrowing. Gulp, gulp. Grabbing a jar of good wine, he poured it into his mouth. The wine flowed down his neck. Cool. Keep it up. The Grand Baron's sex master swallowed the food in his mouth. He was so excited, shouting, and then continued to pour food into his mouth. However, right after that, he was a little surprised. Because swish, the little girl piled up a plate she had licked clean. She exhaled, wiping her mouth contentedly. Then, she turned to look at the lady in the chef robe. She finished it just like that? The Grand Baron's sex master was bewildered. Was this kid sick? How could she eat more than him? Far from them, the Heavenly Springs' Saint Sun raised his glass and sipped. His eyes fell on Xiaoya. His brows arched, and the corners of his mouth curled as if he was thinking about something. This little girl is strange. All of a sudden, the Heavenly Springs' Saint Sun's body shook. Right after that, he poured the entire glass of wine into his mouth. His eyes showed sorrow. Lan Ji is dead. I'm so angry. Chapter 666. Lan Ji was dead. The Heavenly Springs' Saint Sun poured a mouthful of wine into his mouth. The bitter taste diffused on his tongue. The wine dripped from the corner of his mouth, dripping on the floor. The sorrow in his eyes grew thickly. He angrily threw the cup on the table, trying to suppress his sorrow. Qi-Ji sat cross-legged by the Heavenly Springs' Saint Sun. Hearing him, she was bewildered. Lan Ji was dead? How could it be? Qi-Ji was bewildered, looking at the Heavenly Springs' Saint Sun. The wine he had poured out had seeped out of the cup, dripping on the table. Inexplicably, a chill and sorrow surged in her heart. It was okay if Lu Ji was dead, but Lan Ji was also dead. It was terrible. Sneaking a peek at the Saint Sun's handsome face, he discovered that the Saint Sun's entire body seemed to be suppressing his anger. Lan Ji was the Saint's favorite maid. It was because Lan Ji was calmer than Lu Ji and Lan Ji. She was more reliable, and she was beautiful. No wonder why the Saint Sun was so sorrowful when such a maid died. Good. That little chef is good. The Heavenly Springs' Saint Sun's face was still calm. He resumed his calmness. He glanced at Qi-Ji. She pulled herself together and hurried to give him the wine cup. The Heavenly Springs' Saint Sun received the cup and drained it. After a moment, the energy in his palm dispersed. The cup was crushed into powder in his hand. Die! The Grand Baron's sex master gawked. He placed the plate by his side, his chest heaving up and down. His face was dark. He lifted his head, struggling to look at the little girl in front of him. He didn't believe that the little girl was still eating. However, he was desperate. In fact, the little girl was still eating. More importantly, not only was she eating, but she was also enjoying it. She didn't look like she was going to explode. Only ghosts knew what kind of freak that little girl was. She had eaten 10 servings. Was she supposed to eat that? The spiritual energy in 10 servings of the glutton god's banquet was enough to burst a peak of divine physique realm expert, let alone a little girl. The Grand Baron's sex master panted, his face constipated. His abdomen bulged like a big ball. He felt like throwing up. His heart was filled with discomfort. When the other experts saw the Grand Baron's sex master, they all laughed out loud. Even the Grand Baron's sex master, who was the best at eating, was eaten. That little girl, what kind of monster was she? Many people were extremely curious and looked at the little girl one after another. As if sensing the gazes of the crowd, the little girl timidly lifted her head as a trace of nervousness surfaced on her face. I'm full. The little girl carefully put down the plate that she had just lifted. She pouted and said with some grievance. Everyone was speechless. Are you full? Do you look like you're full? Xiao Yu smiled awkwardly and patted the little girl's head. Although he didn't know why this little girl could eat so much, it was a blessing to be able to eat. It's fine. If you want to eat, continue eating. Don't mind it, said Xiao Yu. When the little girl heard Xiao Yu's words, she immediately raised her head and her eyes lit up. Really? How could it be fake? Said Xiao Yu. The little girl was so excited. She looked at the lady in the chef's robe and said excitedly, Give me 5 more servings. Xiao Yu, the lady in the chef's robe, everybody else, this last, could it be that she really was a pig? No, even a pig couldn't eat that much. The dishes were served again. Everybody looked at the little girl, stuffing the new dishes into her mouth. From her appearance, it seemed she could eat more. All of a sudden, on a platform far from them, the Heavenly Springs Saint's son stood up. He slowly turned his head to look at Xiao Yu, his eyes cold and indifferent. Xiao Yu felt a murderous aura immediately. The long sword on his back swayed. The Heavenly Springs Saint's son walked out of the platform, floating in the void. He slowly walked in the void, walking towards Xiao Yu's high platform. Heavenly Springs Saint's son, what do you want to do? Xiao Yu frowned. When the Heavenly Springs Saint's son was about to reach the platform, he shouted. The Heavenly Springs Saint's son clasped his hands. His gold armor glowed in the sky. His domineering aura diffused from his body. Give me that girl, said the Heavenly Springs Saint's son indifferently. His target was the little girl. Because the Heavenly Springs Saint's son had seen her before, he knew she was the one who stayed with Bufang. Today, 2 of his maids had died in Bufang's hands. How could he stand aside and watch? Of course, he wanted to make Bufang pay with his blood. However, when he said that, everybody was bewildered. That gluttonous little girl. Had she finally angered someone? Even the Heavenly Springs Saint's son couldn't stand it anymore. Was he going to punish that glutton? Nobody knew why, but some people exhaled in relief. Xiao Yu stood up, facing the Heavenly Springs Saint's son. Of course, he couldn't let the Heavenly Springs Saint's son take the little girl away. No matter what, he had promised Bufang that he would take good care of her. What if I say no? Xiao Yu's face was cold, as if there was frost floating around. Far from them, Lianqing was holding a glass of wine, his face smiling. His finger gently touched the glass, squinting at Xiao Yu. Brother Yu, why do you want to offend the Heavenly Springs Saint's son for a glutton girl? Xiao Yu frowned, looking at Lianqing indifferently. You shut up. His words were merciless. It was like a slap on Lianqing's face. The smile on the latter's face vanished instantly. You're really courting death, Lianqing said coldly. If you don't hand over the little girl, I don't care if you're a genius of the heavens, pivot holy land or not. The Heavenly Springs Saint's son was suppressing his terrible anger. His anger made his words full of murderous intent. Xiao Yu shuddered inwardly. He could see that the Heavenly Springs Saint's son was serious. It wasn't like before, when the Heavenly Springs Saint's son dealt with him because of Lianqing. This time, the Heavenly Springs Saint's son was determined to deal with the little girl. How could it be? How did the little girl offend the Heavenly Springs Saint's son? Did the Heavenly Springs Saint's son have a prejudice against gluttons? He couldn't bear to see people eat? The long sword moved, buzzing unceasingly. Xiao Yu held the sword in his hand. The sword energy shot out. With your current condition, I can crush you with just one finger. Do you really want to stop me? The Heavenly Springs Saint's son stood high, looking down at Xiao Yu. Lianqing was watching a good show from a distance. Many people around didn't dare to breathe loudly. Who dared to disobey the Saint's son of the Holy Land of the Hidden Dragon Royal Court? Even the sect masters of the big forces didn't dare to breathe loudly. Luo Danqing and the Grand Baron sect master could only watch. They couldn't interfere. Moreover, they didn't need to get involved. They didn't want to be the fish in the moat. All of a sudden, the Heavenly Springs Saint's son's eyes shrank, looking behind him. Their graceful figure was sitting on the platform. Her delicate fingers were stained with some drops of wine. She threw them out, creating air-breaking sounds. The Heavenly Springs Saint's son rose his hand to stop the wine. He was skeptical, looking at that direction. Why did the Celestial Saintess take action? Forgive and forget. Xiao Yu's an old friend of mine. A melodious and ethereal voice rang out. The Celestial Saintess played with the exquisite bottle of wine, speaking. Everybody was frightened. They took a deep breath. No one could have thought that the Celestial Saintess and Xiao Yu were old friends. Did they know each other? Moreover, Xiao Yu could make the Celestial Saintess save him. What was the relationship between them? Lianqing's eyes shrank. He couldn't believe it. Xiao Yu knew the Celestial Saintess? How could it be? He was a bumpkin from a barren land. How could he know the Celestial Saintess? Damn it. If that was really the case, then Xiao Yu deserved to die even more. Lianqing's face darkened, his murderous aura rising. Xiao Yu was a little bewildered. He didn't think that the Celestial Saintess would save him. Was it because of that little girl? All right, I won't do anything to Xiao Yu. Give me that girl. I won't blame you, said the Heavenly Springs Saint's son. Impossible. Xiao Yu swung his sword. Sword energy shot out. The Heavenly Springs Saint's son turned his head, looking at Xiao Yu coldly. Xiao Yu didn't fear him. All right, this time, I will spare your life. After a while, the Heavenly Springs Saint's son said faintly. Then, he returned to his seat. Xiao Yu exhaled in relief, putting his sword back into its sheath. He glanced at the little girl. The little girl looked at him with an aggrieved face. It wasn't her fault that she could eat so much. It started to rain again. In the Glutton God City, in front of a quiet restaurant, Bu Fong slowly appeared. He raised his head and looked at the restaurant, which was closed tightly. He furrowed his brows. No one was there. Did they go to the Glutton God's banquet? Bu Fong walked on the long street for a while. He found that the restaurants around were closed. Apparently, they had gone to the Glutton God's banquet. Wenren Shang had gone to the Glutton God's banquet, no doubt. Bu Fong exhaled. If he wanted to ask Wenren Shang to cook the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish, he had to go to the Glutton God's banquet. If he wanted to go, he would go. Bu Fong was looking forward to the Glutton God's banquet. The rain poured down. Bu Fong strolled in the rain, heading to the Glutton God's building where the Glutton God's banquet was held. That place was brightly lit. The light shot up to the sky, dazzling and eye-catching. Chapter 667. The Heavenly Springs Saint's son's sudden action didn't affect the bustling Glutton God's banquet. Everyone continued to eat and drink as they liked, tasting the delicacies that were hard to come by. As they felt the delicacies blossoming on the tip of their tongues, a joyful smile appeared on their faces. Some people hadn't seen each other for a long time. They were sitting in their seats, drinking to their friends not far from them. After drinking, they laughed happily. Their faces were full of smiles. The white-haired old man, Chu Changsheng, sat cross-legged in the center of the square. He was tasting the food and drinking the wine, his face calm and indifferent. At this moment, the Glutton God's banquet had just started. Everybody was looking forward to it. The Heavenly Springs Saint's son's face was dark and gloomy. Qi Ji sat by him, holding her breath. The Saint's son rarely showed such a face. Once he did, It meant he wasn't in a good mood. Something bad was about to happen. In fact, the Heavenly Springs Saint Sun wasn't in a good mood at this moment. Not only that, but he was also suppressing his anger. Xiao Yu of the Heavens, pivot Holy Land. That man was on his must-kill list. It wasn't because of anything else, but because the Celestial Saintess had helped him. How could the Celestial Saintess help that man? Thinking about that, the Heavenly Springs Saint Sun felt the flame of jealousy surging in his entire body. He had an impulse to kill everything. Not only Xiao Yu, but also that damn little chef. That stinky chef who had made him lose Lan Ji and Lu Ji. Whether that chef was from the Valley of Gluttony or not, once he saw him, he had to kill him as fast as lightning. Killing the Heavenly Springs Saint Sun's men was tantamount to challenging his prestige. Boom, boom. The ground of the square changed all of a sudden. High platforms rose, with symbols twirling and twinkling on them, which made them dazzling and eye-catching. Everyone let out exclamations of surprise as they looked at the tall platforms. Their faces were blazing with excitement. As the members of the Valley of Gluttony, they knew what the next event was. It was the competition of 100 chefs. It was the most exciting event of the Glutton Gods Banquet. The top 100 chefs of the Tablet of Gluttony would show their cooking skills on those high platforms. They would be able to see the cooking skills of the top chefs of the continent, and they would be able to experience the magnificence of their cooking, which would make people shiver. Even the weakest chef in the top 100 of the Tablet of Gluttony was a second-grade chef. So many chefs showing their culinary skills at the same time. That kind of cool scene, just thinking about it made people excited. Of course, this was just the beginning of the Glutton Gods Banquet. The Glutton Gods Banquet this time was not just a banquet. It was also a time for the Tablet of Gluttony to be refreshed. Countless genius chefs would emerge like bamboo shoots after the rain, and they would attack the chefs on the Tablet of Gluttony. Once a chef on the Tablet of Gluttony was defeated, the chef who succeeded would take their spot. It was the rule of the Tablet of Gluttony. It was cruel. However, even though that was the case, the true geniuses at the top of the Tablet of Gluttony were still as steady as a rock. If he wanted to kill those monstrous geniuses, he had to be a monstrous genius as well. Those people had ruled the Tablet of Gluttony for too long. Many people had even formed a reverence for them. Creak. The heavy door opened, and dust seemed to float over. The door of the Glutton Gods building opened, and figures walked out of it. They all wore chef robes, and their spirit, energy, and soul were so terrifying, as if they wanted to shoot up into the sky. Their chef robes were exquisite, with radiance flowing on them and sparkling lines. From their chef robes, one could see their culinary skills, but no one knew if they had concealed their real skills or not. The Glutton Gods Banquet was not only a chance for those unknown chefs, but it was also a chance for many chefs to reach the next level. This was because every increase in rank on the Tablet of Gluttony meant that one would be able to obtain better resources. Resources were power, and each chef would try his best to show off his abilities. White-haired, white-browed Chu Chongsheng stood up. He turned around to look at the chefs walking out of the Glutton Gods building, his face stern. Those chefs respectfully bowed to Chu Chongsheng. A moment later, their bodies shot out. True energy gushed out as they crossed the sky, flying toward the high platform. Soon, they landed on their respective seats. Many people exclaimed in admiration, "Worthy of the Valley of Gluttony, a force that could compete with the holy lands of the Hidden Dragon Royal Court. Those disciples' competence wasn't ordinary." Everybody's eyes were bright. Those chefs' spirit, energy, and soul were really astonishing. Some of them carried a big wok, landing on the high platform like meteors. Some of them held a heavy kitchen knife, and when they swung it, knife energy crisscrossed. Some of them wore long robes, which fluttered in the wind. Those chefs had different styles, and they weren't ordinary at all. However, the ones that people were anticipating the most were the last 10 chefs. They were the top 10 chefs of the Tablet of Gluttony. They were the real monstrous chefs. Ouyang Qinfeng's aura fluctuated. His long robe slowly fluttered as he clasped his hands, walking forward. His body slowly floated. Ouyang Chenfeng ranked 10th on the tablet of gluttony. Many people's eyes became hot. Noodle King Ouyang Chenfeng was famous in the Valley of Gluttony. Noodle King's specialty was the heaven burial noodles, which many people have been waiting for. Besides Ouyang Chenfeng, there were many domineering chefs. One of them carried a strange kitchen knife, which looked like a scimitar emitting a cold light. He was also a chef, and he was ranked higher than Ouyang Chenfeng on the tablet of gluttony. Another chef was holding a piece of raw meat, chewing. Those chefs all had their own features, which made many people exclaim in admiration. When they landed on the high platform, the people of the Valley of Gluttony and the Gluttony Gods building screamed in excitement. In the Valley of Gluttony, cooking was everything. Outside the Gluttony Gods building, Bu Fong lifted his head to look at the towering Gluttony Gods building, which looked like a giant monster. His eyes showed his surprise. This building was really big. However, his surprise didn't last for a long time. Bu Fong strode toward the Gluttony Gods building. As the Glutton Gods banquet was going to be held there, Wenren Shang should be in the Gluttony Gods building. As long as he got there, he could find Wenren Shang. Thus, Bu Fong didn't hesitate much. He strode forward and entered the building. However, as soon as Bu Fong entered the gate of the Gluttony Gods building, he was stopped. The one who stopped him was also wearing a chef robe. However, judging from his robe, his level wasn't high. Bu Fong had seen the chef robes of Ouyang Chenfeng and Wenren Shang, and they were much more luxurious than the one in front of him. According to the Valley of Gluttony's rules, the fancier the chef's robe was, the better his cooking skills would be. "I want to find someone," said Bu Fong seriously, looking at the chef who had stopped him. He really wanted to find someone. He had caught the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish, and Wenren Shang said that he knew how to cook it. Bu Fong needed to learn. Regarding the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish, Bu Fong didn't know much. Even from the system's explanation, Bu Fong only knew that it was really hard to cook the fish. If he wasn't careful, the fish would become poisonous. To cook the paper-wrapped fish perfectly, Bu Fong needed to ask Wenren Shang for advice on how to cook the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. The chef looked at Bu Fong suspiciously. He found that Bu Fong's chef robe was different from theirs. Instantly, the suspicion on his face became thicker. "Do you have an invitation?" "Without an invitation, you can't get in." "You can't get in, either," the chef kindly reminded him. "Invitation?" Bu Fong was surprised. He couldn't help but furrow his brows. He didn't have an invitation. Did it mean that he couldn't get in? The Glutton Gods banquet is the grandest banquet in the Valley of Gluttony. There are many participants, but the number of seats is limited. If everyone can get in without an invitation like you, the Glutton Gods banquet will be a mess, said the chef. He looked at Bu Fong sympathetically and said, "That's why I won't allow you to enter." He couldn't get in? Bu Fong furrowed his brows tightly. The chef looked at Bu Fong, clasping his hands and pretending to be mysterious. He looked at the sunset lake in the distance. Bu Fong looked at the back of that guy. Green smoke twirled around his hand, and the black turtle constellation wok appeared in his hand. If he couldn't get in, then he would force his way in. He would hit that guy with the wok and knock him out. However, when Bu Fong was about to hit the wok, the chef turned around. He happened to see Bu Fong, who was holding the black turtle constellation wok with an emotionless face. "What are you doing with the wok?" asked the chef curiously. Bu Fong's face was emotionless. "Guess." The chef looked at Bu Fong, smiling. "A wok in a chef robe. From your appearance, you should be a chef, right? If you're a chef, it's easy. If you want to enter the Glutton Gods banquet, there's another way." Bu Fong was bewildered. Slowly, he put down the black turtle constellation wok. He looked at the chef, signaling him to continue. The Glutton Gods banquet has 100 chefs hegemony competition. It's called the 100 Chefs Hegemony Competition, but all the chefs in the Valley of Gluttony can join it. However, low-level chefs like us, of course, can't enter the Glutton Gods building square to join the 100 Chefs Hegemony Competition. We need to go through the selection process to have a chance. The chef sighed. If you want to join the selection process, of course, it means you've entered the Valley of Gluttony. What does the selection process mean? Buffon was skeptical. Of course, it's the selection process. Each chef on the tablet of gluttony has an arena in the glutton god's building square. We can choose to challenge a chef. Once we win, we can get the others ranking, explained the chef. Buffon's eyes brightened after listening to him. It was really cruel. Once they lost, the chef on the tablet of gluttony would become someone else's stepping stone. No one wanted to be someone else's stepping stone. Thus, every chef in the Valley of Gluttony had to work hard to practice their cooking skills. It was really inspiring. Buffon rubbed his chin, giving his compliments. Buffon glanced at the glutton god's building square, taking a deep breath. It seemed like there was no other way to enter the glutton god's building square. Even if they could enter the glutton god's building square, it would be hard to find one rinshang in such a vast area. What the chef said made sense. Then, they should join the selection and get the qualification to challenge the arena. Then, they could find one rinshang directly. It would be easy. You don't need to be discouraged. We're here to challenge the arena. It's important to participate and feel the atmosphere of the competition. Winning or losing isn't important. What we need is experience. Look at you. You're so young. Your future is bright. The chef was eloquent. He pulled Buffon's hand and talked nonstop. He looked like he was trying to persuade him. Buffon was a little annoyed, so he directly interrupted him. Take me to the location of the selection. Don't talk anymore. The chef was bewildered. His brows arched in surprise. Oh, you really want to join? Chapter 668. Gulp. The corners of someone's mouth rose. What? Hey, kid, you want to go in like that? The chef was bewildered. Then, his face changed as he hurried to stop him. What's the use of carving it on the door? Buffon looked at the chef. Each floor was filled with natives from the Valley of Gluttony. Some of them were holding 2 kitchen knives, clanging against each other. Some were playing with a spirit beast. Some had a black wok on their head, trying to balance themselves. Bro, you're in a hurry, aren't you? Teacher, we can't find that young man's information in the database. Perhaps he's not a chef from the Valley of Gluttony, said the stiff-faced man. The other one is Jun Qingxiao. He's old Shui's new apprentice. Don't talk. Lead the way. I'm in a hurry, said Buffon. The chef rushed in and apologized to the group of chefs with an embarrassed face. His face was full of uneasiness. That old man was the 6th elder of the Elder Committee of the Valley of Gluttony. Buffon, a chef who wasn't even a 3rd-grade chef. However, it was too late. Buffon had pushed the door open. As soon as Buffon pushed the door open and stepped into the room, a faint aroma assailed his nostrils. A moment later, the woman turned around, swaying her body as she walked into the room. The chef's chest heaved. Eventually, he exhaled, turning around to lead the way. Can't you talk properly? Uffed. This kid is really in a hurry, isn't he? The chef's ears twitched, looking at Buffon in astonishment. To those uneducated little chefs, I really want to have a chef's battle with them. I want to let them know that it's not easy to be a chef. All right, don't talk. Lead the way, said Buffon with a sigh. You don't need to doubt me. Just lead the way. I'm in a hurry. The chef was bewildered. His face reddened. This man, how could he be so unreasonable? The stiff-faced man was bewildered. A moment later, he took out a white jade talisman, urging his true energy. Lots of information emerged on the jade talisman. Buffon was stunned. The word fear really didn't exist in his dictionary. The mustached old man didn't move, and neither did the expressionless face. Then, his eyes shifted to the group of chefs. He extended his hand and gently patted Jun Qingxiao's shoulder. A moment later, he took a step forward. Fine. You're in a hurry, really? The chef shook his head, looking a little angry. Jun Qingxiao felt encouraged when Buffon patted his shoulder, but now, he almost vomited blood when he heard Buffon. Buffon's words caused the laughter in the room to instantly stop. Then, everyone's gaze landed on him. As soon as these words came out, everyone's heart trembled. Isn't that Zhou Tong? Did he also participate in the 100 chefs competition? Buffon murmured. Yeah, Are these patterns of formation? Bufong raised his eyebrows in surprise. Some even laughed so hard that tears were about to flow down their cheeks. Hey, hasn't the competition started yet? I'm in a hurry. The man's face was solemn, and he had a serious, unsmiling zombie face. The woman, on the other hand, was quite seductive. Her red lips were like flames, and her eyes were like silk. Her body was hot, and her chest was bulging, pushing up her chef robe. The rest of the people followed behind the woman and walked past the two of them. When Bufong passed by the side of the bearded old man, the incomparably lazy old man's eyes suddenly slightly widened, and he turned his head to look at Bufong. Bufong looked at him, the corners of his mouth twitching. Bufong looked at the chef. Looking at the latter's skeptical face, he couldn't help but smirk. A man with a scar across his face spat disdainfully. He glanced sideways at the chef and sneered. The chef was speechless. He suddenly found that this young man in front of him was really arrogant. A moment later, he opened his eyes, and everything in front of him became clear. Ha! I really want to laugh. A muscular man slowly stood up. In his hand, he was playing with a snake-type spirit beast that was spitting out cold air. Its head was shiny as though it could reflect light. The chef didn't say anything. He just looked at Bufong, revealing a meaningful smile. Then, he turned around and led the way. All right, everyone, follow me. Our qualifying competition is very simple. It's not complicated at all. The alluring lady with a fiery figure opened her mouth. The moment she opened her mouth, her gentle voice caused many people's hearts to soften. Do you really think the competition is for fun? Bufong squinted his eyes, as though he saw a familiar figure. Just when the atmosphere in the room was tense, the opposite door opened with a squeak, and 3 figures slowly walked out. At the very front was an old man with a small mustache. The old man's eyes were languid as he glanced at everyone in the kitchen. Through the walls of the Gluttony Gods building, which was made of an unknown transparent material, he could see the crazy faces of the natives. The excitement in their eyes surprised Bufong. After a short while, the two of them arrived in front of a simple wooden door. You are guy. I'm Jun Qingxiao. Seniors, please guide me. That little chef has a strong aura. Interesting. Do you have his information? The chef wanted to cry. He really wanted to cry. We're here, kid. Then, everybody's eyes fell on Bufong and Jun Qingxiao, who were standing by the door. The Gluttony Gods building was massive, with 10 floors. Bufong also looked at them. Their eyes collided in the void. Bufong and Jun Qingxiao strode forward, following them. Bufong's indifferent appearance made them feel a kind of arrogance, and this arrogance made them very unhappy. A third-grade chef, and a chef who's not even a third-grade chef. Are you here to make fun of us? The chef was speechless. Who the hell knew what they could do? You know your stuff. The patterns on this door are made by some blacksmith grandmasters of our Valley of Gluttony. They were supposed to carve them on a kitchen knife, but the grandmaster suddenly had an idea to carve them on the door. The chef's ears twitched as he turned around. Someone's eyes became hot. Looking at the voluptuous body of that woman, his atoms apple-bobbed. The smell made him squint his eyes slightly. The bald man who was playing with a cold snake patted his bald head, speaking coldly. Who do you think you are? You dare to be arrogant here? Where did this little chef come from? Do you think this is your kitchen? You're in a hurry. Do you want to go back to drink milk? Do you think it's easy to pass the test? The people around also mocked and ridiculed him. Some of them had a cold gleam in their eyes. Bufong's indifferent eyes made the old man suspicious. What's wrong, teacher? A man and a woman followed behind the old man. Old Chue's apprentice? Interesting. The other young man with imposing aura isn't a chef of our Valley of Gluttony? Ha! Then it's more interesting. Ask Lena to treat that little chef well. Our Valley of Gluttony shouldn't treat our guests well. Especially that arrogant guy who said he was in a hurry. The old man with the mustache shook his cheeks as he spoke. The stiff-faced man asked as if he could feel the old man's strange expression. The test doesn't limit the cooking level. However, if your cooking level is too low, you'll be considered a troublemaker. Please assess your competence. Otherwise, you'll be thrown out of the gluttony god's building and become a laughingstock. Don't blame us for not reminding you, said the stiff-faced man. They were crazy because of the 100 chefs in the gluttony god's building. Jun Qingxiao was the chef who led Bufang here. At this moment, his face reddened as he bowed to him. Afraid? Bufang let out an oath, then pushed the door open, walking in. Pa, a third-grade chef like you dares to join the test? Who gave you the courage? The corners of Bufang's mouth twitched. He turned to look at the wall. Through the wall and the crazy crowd, Bufang saw the so-called top 100 chefs. Tap, tap, tap. As soon as the three of them entered the room, the atmosphere in the room changed. After searching for a while, the stiff-faced man's eyes became solemn. However, Bufang acted as if he didn't see him. Jun Qingxiao was a third-grade chef. The chefs in the room straightened their bodies, nodding to the old man respectfully. Everyone who wants to join the test is here, right? If you come again, you won't be qualified. Now, you naughty kids, follow me. Do you think you're a chef on the tablet of gluttony? Don't talk. Move. I'm in a hurry, said Bufang. These two fellows were the most likely to be thrown out of the gluttony god's building. With this kind of competence, they would be at the bottom of the test. I believe I can do it. My teacher said I can do it. Jun Qingxiao balled his fists, trying to cheer himself up. Do you see that? If you can stand out in the test, you'll be facing the target that these people are crazy about. Do you feel afraid? Some people snorted disdainfully. Countless eyes fell on Bufang, and many of them had different expressions on their faces. So you know Chef Zhou Tong. Chef Zhou Tong's background isn't ordinary. He's the disciple of our Valley of Gluttony's great elder, Chu Changsheng. His cooking talent is amazing. Several days ago, he came back to seclusion to cultivate. When he got out, he had reached the first-grade chef level. Chef Zhou Tong was already extraordinary, and today, he's even more extraordinary. Praise the chef. Puff! The chef felt like an invisible arrow had shot out, piercing his chest and spinning around. He felt so uncomfortable that he wanted to cry. Oh, you really want to join? The chef was surprised. He didn't think that this young chef in front of him would join the competition. Didn't he know that the glutton god's banquet test was really terrifying? Everything in front of him became clear. He could see many things clearly. When Bufang pushed the door open, the others were surprised. They all turned to look at him. Aha! Seniors, I'm so sorry. We're also here to join the test. Please take care of us. This wooden door looked simple and unadorned, with many patterns carved on it. Those patterns were so mysterious that people couldn't help but immerse themselves in them. The chef walked in front of them. He seemed to feel Bufang's curious eyes, so he smiled and said. As the burly man's words rang out, everyone in the room burst into laughter. Jun Qingxiao felt people's mocking laughter. He was a little embarrassed, but he was also a little bit angry. Jun Qingxiao grimaced. He hurried to pull Bufang's sleeve, signaling Bufang to retreat. Bufang's vermilion robe fluttered, following the chef. The two of them entered the glutton gods, building one after the other. Watching Bufang and Jun Qingxiao disappear, the old man's eyes were deep. Chapter 669. The woman's figure swayed as she walked. Behind her, a group of chefs swallowed their saliva. Of course, some pretended to be natural, while others weren't interested in that woman. The moment they stepped into the room, the fragrance of stir-frying dishes gushed out. In an instant, the space in front of them became spacious. The incomparably vast first floor had been transformed into a kitchen. Rows of stoves were arranged in a horizontal manner, with chefs cooking in full swing on each of the stoves. One after another, the dishes were cooked and then brought out. A chef's head was covered in sweat, and he looked exhausted. Many people were suspicious, so they couldn't help but ask that woman, "Why is that chef still cooking? Shouldn't he have finished his food by now? Why is there still someone eating? How much does he have to eat?" Someone exclaimed. That woman turned her head, revealing her beautiful side profile. Looking at the sweating chef, she covered her mouth and chuckled. This time, the Glutton God's Banquet has invited many people who know how to eat. That chef is in charge of table, and it happens to be someone who knows how to eat. Of course, that chef can't rest. Hiss, everybody took in a breath of cold air, feeling sad for that chef. Others only needed to cook one dish, but that chef had to cook more than 10. It was really terrifying. It was no wonder that the chef looked so exhausted. Everybody muttered inwardly. If they were in his shoes, they would be exhausted to death. It should be known that cooking didn't only consume physical strength, but also true energy. Once one's true energy was depleted, he would sink into a state of exhaustion. That kind of exhaustion was hard to get rid of, and it would affect one's condition a lot. Bufong clasped his hands, slowly following the team. He also watched the chefs cooking on both sides. It was the first time he had seen such a big kitchen. The bustling scene was worthy of the Valley of Gluttony, which was the holy land of chefs. There was a reason why it could be called the chef's holy land. There were many people in the kitchen. Of course, Bufong heard what that woman said. A foodie who knew how to eat? Bufong pouted his lips. He wouldn't spoil a foodie. Even when the two foodies, Lord Go and you, asked him to cook another dish, Bufong would always refuse them. Therefore, Bufong felt that the chef was a little silly. After passing through the bustling cooking area, Bufong and the others entered a quiet and spacious area. The woman stopped and turned around to look at the crowd. "This is the first stage of the selection, the knife skill stage," said the woman with a charming smile. Her beautiful face bloomed with a smile, dazzling the eyes of all who saw it. Almost all the chefs were fascinated. There are only 30 people who can advance in the knife skill stage. I hope that everyone will make good use of this opportunity, the woman said. After saying that, she took a step back. In the distance, the old man with a handlebar mustache clasped his hands behind his back, quietly watching this group of people. The man with facial paralysis followed behind him, also watching expressionlessly. "Everyone, find your own place. I will distribute the kitchen knives and ingredients to you," the woman said. After listening to her, they found their places at the stoves. In the distance, the man with facial paralysis snapped his fingers at the beautiful female chef. A weak voice came to the woman's ears. The woman was a little bewildered. She looked at the old man with a handlebar mustache, then nodded with a smile on her face. A moment later, the woman strode forward, her body enchanting as she walked to each stove. Every time she came to a stove, she would wave her hand. Lights sparkled, and a weak fluctuation expanded. Instantly, ingredients and a blue kitchen knife emerged. It was the standard of a knife skill stage. The blue kitchen knife matched with the white jade radishes. Everyone has a kitchen knife and 3 white jade radishes. What you have to do is to carve the radishes in the shortest time possible. Then, we'll give you a score. The one who gets our approval will advance," said the woman. While talking, the woman distributed the kitchen knives and radishes. Eventually, she walked to Bufong. Looking at Bufong's calm face, the corners of the woman's mouth rose. Bufong looked at her suspiciously. A moment later, the woman waved her hand, and a blue kitchen knife with some black spots emerged. The 3 white jade radishes looked a little short. "What?" Bufong raised his eyebrows. With his experience, he could tell at a glance that this kitchen knife was the worst out of all the kitchen knives. The array lines on it were broken, and the material of the kitchen knife was not very good. Did this woman want to stir up trouble? Was she targeting him? She gave him such a shabby kitchen knife, and the radishes she gave him were really short. Compared to the other people's plump, white jade radishes, his ingredients were naturally inferior. Lifting his head to look at the woman, Bufong's eyes focused. The woman smiled, nodding to Bufong. Then, she turned around and walked away. "All right, you guys can start now. You have the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. It's time to show your knife skills." The woman extended her slender, white fingers, rubbing her red lips as she smiled. Did she do it on purpose? Bufong arched his brows. He didn't know why this woman wanted to target him. Anyway, it was good to finish it as soon as possible. He was in a hurry. Hence, Bufong didn't dwell on it for too long. With a flick of his hand, the blue-colored kitchen knife with a hint of black fell into his hand. The knife twirled, emitting a dazzling blue light. Bufong twirled the knife, the corners of his mouth twitching. This kitchen knife was really lousy. It was really uncomfortable to hold it. Jun Qingxiao had been paying attention to Bufang. He didn't think that the precursor would give Bufang such trashy kitchen knives and ingredients. Was she targeting him on purpose? It was too much. Do you need me to exchange for a white jade radish? Jun Qingxiao discreetly talked to Bufang. Bufang was bewildered. His face softened as he said faintly, "No need. I'm in a hurry." Puff! Jun Qingxiao was speechless. Hurry your sister. Who do you want to defeat with this rotten radish? Jun Qingxiao felt that his good intention was taken as malicious intent. He turned his head, snorting inwardly. Then he started to deal with the ingredients in his hand. His mind was highly concentrated. The kitchen knife flew up, spinning in his hand. Then it slashed down. Puff! 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 The white jade radish made soft noises. Pieces of radish flew everywhere. The entire room quieted down. Everybody held their knives and started to deal with the white jade radish. The woman walked to the old man with a handlebar mustache. She slightly bowed to him and stood behind him. "Teacher, why do you have to trouble that kid?" The woman didn't understand, asking skeptically. The stiff-faced man squinted at the woman, his face emotionless. "That kid isn't a chef from the Valley of Gluttony. We can't find his information in the database. Perhaps he's a chef from outside the valley." A chef from outside the valley? A chef from outside the valley dared to join the selection of the 100 chefs competition? That young man had big guts. If a chef from outside the valley dares to come, he must have some confidence. That young man isn't ordinary. Consider it a test for him. Otherwise, if we let him join the 100 chefs competition easily, the Valley of Gluttony will lose its face. The old man clasped his hands, looking at Bufang. However, shortly after, his eyes focused. His pupils shrank as he took a deep breath. His handlebar mustache twitched. The enchanting woman and the stiff-faced man were suspicious of the old man's face. They followed his line of sight and took in a deep breath. There, the knife light flashed, and the knife light flashed unceasingly. That sharp knife skill had a terrifying domineering aura. The kind of invisible domineering aura diffused, making people frightened. The woman's charming eyes opened wide. Her red lips parted, and her elegant hand covered her mouth. She was so surprised. The stiff-faced man's nostrils flared, his eyes focused. This knife skill. Bufang wore an indifferent face as he played with the blue knife in his hand. A moment later, he clenched it, his eyes focused. In the next moment, he spun the kitchen knife in his hand and slapped the short radish horizontally, causing it to fly into the air. Buzz, a jet of blue light, seemed to tear the sky, slashing down. A domineering aura arose behind him. The white jade radish spun in the air. Ripping sounds echoed, and the radish skin was sent flying. Bufang gazed at the white jade radish, imagining what kind of carving it would look like. His 3 white jade radishes were short, and they didn't have the same shape. They were indeed trash ingredients. However, Bufang didn't mind. A scene flashed in his head. Thinking of this scene, Bufang's mouth curled up. With a snap, he grabbed the handle of the spinning kitchen knife. The carrot also stopped spinning and fell down. The kitchen knife swept out horizontally, catching the carrot. The tip of the knife moved, slashing hard. Immediately, the radish chips flew everywhere. Swoosh! Jun Qingxiao carefully put the knife down, wiping the sweat on his forehead. Looking at his work, he felt satisfied. This time, he had performed better than usual. Although the knife skill wasn't his best, under his teacher's guidance, he had become more proficient in it. His teacher had told him that the knife skill was the foundation of a chef. He had to master it well. In front of him, a jade white flower bloomed quietly. The petals were as thin as a cicada's wings, as if they could break with a light touch. It was almost real. Moreover, he didn't spend much time, just around half an incense stick of time. Even if it wasn't the fastest time, it shouldn't be slow. He wondered how that little chef had finished his work. Anyway, with that kind of kitchen knife and ingredients, he was afraid that it would be tough to finish his work. Jun Qingxiao lifted his head to check. Indeed, the incense stick was half-burned. Many chefs around were concentrating on their work. Of course, some chefs had finished their work. Their eyes met. Indeed, his teacher was right. The chefs of the Valley of Gluttony weren't weak. The Valley of Gluttony had too many chefs and elites. He shouldn't be too arrogant. Jun Qingxiao nodded solemnly, turning to Bu Fong. He wanted to see how Bu Fong was doing. If he couldn't finish, he could lend the knife to Bu Fong. No matter what, he had finished his work. However, when he turned his head, he found that Bu Fong had pulled out a chair from somewhere and was curled up in it. Bu Fong's eyes were slightly closed, and he looked drowsy. What the heck? You're giving up just like that? Jun Qingxiao felt pain in his liver. You. Jun Qingxiao looked at Bu Fong, but he couldn't finish his sentence. Bu Fong opened his drowsy eyes, glancing at Jun Qingxiao. The corners of his mouth twitched. You guys are too slow. I'm in a hurry. You're in a hurry again? Bu Fong's words surprised Jun Qingxiao. Right after that, he seemed to remember something. He turned to look at Bu Fong's stove. At this glance, his vision blurred. It was like an ancient, brutal crocodile was opening its mouth to attack him. OF*CK. What the heck? Chapter 670. At that moment, Jun Qingxiao was bewildered. When he saw the carrot that Bu Fong had carved, his soul shivered. Goosebumps rose all over his skin. He was dumbstruck at his spot. In his mind, he felt like a giant alligator was opening its mouth to attack him. The terrifying aura burst out in just a blink of an eye. He couldn't help but pale, taking several steps backward. So scary. What's that thing after all? His mental energy gathered to wash away the scene in front of him. What appeared in front of him was the exquisite white jade carving of the alligator on Bu Fong's stove. Bu Fong looked at him indifferently, the corners of his mouth curling up. What? What's that? Why can it move? Jun Qingxiao was shivering inwardly. He looked at Bu Fong and asked, It can move? Bu Fong was surprised. A moment later, the curve of his mouth became bigger. You're wrong. It can't move, said Bu Fong. Jun Qingxiao didn't believe him. He came closer and assessed the white jade alligator from head to toe. Suddenly, he took a deep breath. Did you use the worst carrot to carve it? Jun Qingxiao couldn't believe it, so he screamed in surprise. He used a trashy kitchen knife and a rotten carrot, but he could carve such a beautiful and charming work. This man in front of him, who was he after all? Jun Qingxiao lifted his head, his pupils shrinking. He gazed at Bu Fong and took a deep breath, his mind frightened. From a distance, the old man with a handlebar mustache brought the stiff-faced man and the beautiful woman. His face was stern. Under people's gazes, the three of them walked to Bu Fong's stove. Jun Qingxiao shuddered inwardly. He hurried to return to his seat, stooping as if he was nervous. Bu Fong looked at the three of them, his face still calm. This is your work? The old man with a handlebar mustache observed the white jade alligator from a close distance. He took a deep breath and then turned to Bu Fong, asking seriously, If it's not mine, then whose is it? It's all thanks to that weird-shaped garbage white jade radish. Otherwise, I wouldn't have planned on carving this thing, Bu Fong said. The expression of the woman behind the old man immediately turned cold. She could hear the sarcastic tone in Bu Fong's words and could not help but snored inwardly. The stiff-faced man stared at the white jade crocodile. His eyes slightly shrank. A long while later, he sucked in a deep breath through his teeth. This white jade crocodile is so terrifying. It seems to have a soul. Very good. Young people are full of vigor. The old man with a handlebar mustache didn't say anything. He just gave Bu Fong a deep look. A moment later, he brought the stiff-faced man and the woman away from Bu Fong's position. As Bu Fong watched the three of them leave, the corners of his mouth twitched. How much longer? I'm in a hurry. Jun Qingxiao's face stiffened. This man didn't know how to live or die. He didn't want to hurry. It was a provocation. Right when Jun Qingxiao thought that the other great masters would be enraged, he found that they just paused for a while before continuing to move forward. Got it, the old man with a handlebar mustache's faint voice arose. Everybody halted. A moment later, They looked at Bu Fong with disbelief. What was going on? Did the sixth elder answer that kid? Could it be that even the elders despised them for being too slow? Some of them had tears in their eyes. It wasn't their fault that they were slow. It was that kid who was too fast. Many people felt indignant and sorrowful. However, this indignation quickly turned into fright. They looked at Bu Fong with only fear left in their hearts. This man's knife technique. Why was it so monstrous? For what the sixth elder had said, he apparently appreciated that kid's work a lot. In such a short time, he could carve such a marvelous work. This kind of competence, even a first-grade chef couldn't compare to him. Jun Qingxiao was the most astounded one. He thought that Bu Fong was just here to watch the show. He didn't expect that the other was in a hurry. The bald man's eyes showed his indignation. His work was done, but it seemed Bu Fong's work wasn't as good as his. As arrogant as he was, of course, he was irritated. He pinched the head of the spirit beast snake in his hand, exerting more force. The snake's body coiled around the bald man's arm. All right, the knife skill challenge is over. Everybody, stop what you're doing. When the last bit of ash was burned, the time it took for an incense stick to burn was up. The beautiful woman called everybody to stop. Everybody placed their kitchen knives on their stoves. The stove was in a mess, and the radish shavings were flying everywhere. All the noise finally came to a stop. Each of them had a finished or unfinished product on their stoves. All kinds of special works were displayed. The woman swayed her hips as she slowly walked past them, collecting the kitchen knives in their hands. When she came to Bu Fong, looking at Bu Fong's calm face, she couldn't help but snort. "It's time to eliminate this kitchen knife," said Bu Fong. A moment later, Bu Fong threw the knife to the woman. The woman caught the knife. Her face changed as she looked at Bu Fong disbelievingly. Bu Fong waved his hand, indicating that he was begrudging. The woman was speechless. The array in the kitchen knife shattered completely, as if it was torn apart by a brutal force. She knew that it was because the chef's skill was too strong, which was beyond the knife's capacity. This young chef's competence. She needed to estimate it carefully. The old man with a handlebar mustache clasped his hands. The three of them slowly walked over from a distance, evaluating each piece of work. "What's this? Flashy but useless. Form and spirit scattering. Get lost. Do you think you're playing with mud? What's this toy? Are you stupid? Such a big piece of radish, and you carved a ball for me at the end? Do you think I need you to carve a ball?" The old man with the handlebar mustache looked kind, but along the way, he had scolded many contestants. Some of them didn't dare to lift their heads after being scolded. They looked like they were constipated. He was an elder. He had the right to speak. What could they do? Along the way, many contestants had been eliminated. They thought that it would be easy to pass the knife skill challenge. But the result was cruel. The stiff-faced man and the beautiful woman exchanged looks. They could see the begrudging look in each other's eyes. Today, the old man was hot-tempered. Those contestants were unlucky. Facing the hot-tempered old man, Jun Qingxiao was so scared that he shivered. Indeed, this elder was as terrifying as the rumors said. Was he going to be eliminated too? So scary. Bu Fong didn't care. He leaned on his chair, squinting. His calm appearance made Jun Qingxiao more anxious. The old man with the handlebar mustache finally came to Jun Qingxiao's stove. With a dark face, he looked at Jun Qingxiao and then at his work. It was a blooming flower. Its petals were as thin as a cicada's wings. While it was swaying, it emitted a beautiful radiance. Eventually, the old man didn't scold him. He just observed it for a while, then extended 2 fingers to stroke his handlebar mustache. Not bad. Looking at this white jade flower, the old man nodded, giving his compliment. Jun Qingxiao stooped and lifted his head. His tense body shivered at this moment. Did he just get complimented? Jun Qingxiao suddenly had an urge to cry. He was always denied and never praised. Now he got complimented. His heart was instantly filled with happiness. The old man patted Jun Qingxiao's shoulder, then walked to Bu Fong. He didn't look at Bu Fong's work. He just looked at Bu Fong indifferently, his eyes so oppressive. The atmosphere seemed to have turned hostile at this moment. The stiff-faced man and the beautiful woman didn't know why the sixth elder suddenly targeted this kid. "Tell me, what did you carve?" asked the old man solemnly. "A crocodile," answered Buffon with his brows arched. "A crocodile? Was it just an ordinary crocodile?" This young man wasn't being honest. The stiff-faced man gazed at the crocodile for a long time. His mind seemed to be swallowed by the crocodile. He was so scared that he hurried to move his eyes away. "What's wrong?" The beautiful woman was skeptical. The stiff-faced man's face twitched. "You still don't recognize what this young man is carving?" The stiff-faced man took a deep breath, his eyes frightened. The beautiful woman was bewildered. She turned around, looking at the white jade crocodile. A moment later, her red lips parted. She covered her mouth with her delicate hand, her face disbelieving. It's the monster in the Sunset Lake." The beautiful woman screamed in fright. She couldn't believe what she saw. Many people in the Valley of Gluttony didn't know about that terrifying monster. However, the stiff-faced man and the beautiful woman were the elder's apprentices. Of course, they knew how terrifying it was. They had never thought that this young man could carve such a monster. Green-toothed ancestral alligator. "You, a little chef, actually know this kind of terrifying savage beast?" "Who are you?" asked the stiff-faced man sternly. His eyes were like sharp swords, gazing at Buffon. "You know the green-toothed ancestral alligator. I heard that the Sunset Lake had an uproar yesterday. Is it related to you?" The green-toothed ancestral alligator was enraged. "It attacked the seal and almost broke it," said the mustached elder. His eyes were so stern, with a divine light that could make people shiver. No one dared to meet his eyes. "Oh, I went fishing. I was careless and lured that beast," said Buffon. The stiff-faced man and the beautiful woman were a little peerless. What did he mean by fishing? Fishing in the Sunset Lake. Are you kidding me? There were so many beasts in the Sunset Lake, and the green-toothed ancestral alligator was strangely ferocious. You, a weak kid, went fishing. The important thing was you walked out alive. Young people nowadays, none of them could be trusted. The old man looked at Buffon, squinting. Eventually, he took a deep breath. He rose his hand, pressing on the green-toothed ancestral alligator's carrot sculpture. True energy surged, and the carrot sculpture exploded into pieces, scattering on the ground. You pass. However, it's better not to carve this kind of beast. The better you carve, the easier it is for the beast's spirit, energy, and soul to harm you, said the old man. Then he stroked his mustache and walked away. Prepare for the next challenge, the fire control challenge. The old man looked at Buffon. Then he flicked his sleeves and turned around. Fire control challenge? Everybody was bewildered. What was there to test about fire control? Could it be that, as a chef, he had to play with flames? Chapter 671. Fire Control Test. Buffon was bewildered. He didn't expect to see the fire control test. It was the first time Buffon had encountered such a test. Many people thought that a chef didn't need to know how to control the flames. The most important thing was to control the heat. However, Buffon thought that if he couldn't control the flames well, how could he control the heat? The old man clasped his hands, continuing to walk forward. The stiff-faced man and the beautiful woman followed him. Shortly after, they got out of the kitchen. Everyone followed behind him and arrived at another room. This room was a little special. It wasn't the kitchen that Buffon had imagined. Quite the contrary, it was a closed space, which was scorching hot. This scorching heat had frightened many people. The moment Buffon stepped into the room, he felt a scorching sensation floating in the air. This kind of scorching heat caused him to be slightly stunned. A familiar feeling actually emerged in his heart. What? Heaven and earth obsidian flame? The fire control test this time would use the heaven and earth obsidian flame, worthy of the Valley of Gluttony. They were rich and overbearing. The heaven and earth obsidian flame was something that could only be chanced upon. Buffon had a lucky encounter to get the 10,000 bestial flame, and the Valley of Gluttony used it for the test. Even the Pill Palace couldn't do that. The old man still clasped his hands, straightening his back and walking in the front. Everybody followed him, their faces curious. Shortly, they came to a high platform. The 30 people who had passed the test gathered, surrounding the high platform tightly. The stiff-faced man looked at them, talking casually. The fire control test is to test your control of flames. Of course, these flames aren't ordinary flames. The stronger the flames are, the better the spirit, energy, and fragrance of the dishes you cook will be. Also, the better the taste of the ingredients will be. However, the fiercer the flame is, the harder it is to control it. It's also the reason why we set up the fire control test. The beautiful woman looked at the others, continuing the stiff-faced man's words. The flame for this test is provided by our Valley of Gluttony. It's a little fiery. You guys should worry about it. The stiff-faced man nodded to the woman, then walked away. After a while, there was a loud bang. As if something had been opened, the entire space lit up like a lantern that had been lit. In the center of the crowd, a fiery red flame soared into the sky, burning fiercely. An even hotter temperature instantly spread out. Everyone was startled, and they quickly retreated. This is the scattered heaven and earth obsidian flame. Its power is not as strong as the heaven and earth obsidian flame, and it is not as violent as the heaven and earth obsidian flame. However, this flame will be the main tool for your assessment, the woman said. She walked to the front of the flame, stretched out her hand, and covered the space above the flame. The next moment, it was as if the air current was surging. The flames began to spin, causing her face to turn red from the light. Rumble. The flames surged up and burned fiercely, giving off a scorching sensation. But after a while, the flame was compressed again like a docile kitten. What you need to do is to control the flames. Each of you has half a cup of tea's time. I hope you can do your best. After the woman finished speaking, she returned to the old man's side. No doubt, this old man was also the judge this time. Facing the heaven and earth obsidian flame, even though it wasn't the real heaven and earth obsidian flame, everybody's face became solemn. It was understandable if an alchemist wanted to control the heaven and earth obsidian flame, but chefs like them didn't need to control such a fierce flame. To them, the purpose of the flame was to heat up the ingredients and cook them well. The flame wasn't important at all. The first one, the woman didn't care about their moods, talking directly. Bufong wore an odd face, looking at the fiery flame. Although the flame was scorching hot, it wasn't a threat to Bufong. No matter what, he had the real heaven and earth obsidian flame in his body. Jun Qingxiao trembled as he stepped in front of the flame, extending his slender hand. The flames darted, and with a boom, his face turned ugly to the extreme. "So hot," said Jun Qingxiao. However, he just said it. His hand didn't stop moving. A wisp of energy diffused. Under his control, the flame quietly moved like a docile kitten. A moment later, Jun Qingxiao's face changed. Instantly, the flames surged. Boom! Rumble! The raging flames were like a raging beast that had gone berserk. "All right, you can leave now," said the old man, interrupting Jun Qingxiao's flame control. Jun Qingxiao was bewildered, walking down the stage. Bufong nodded. He didn't expect that Jun Qingxiao could control the flame that well. It was amazing, worthy of being old Shui's apprentice. That old man must have taught this kid how to control the flame. The old man with the handlebar mustache looked at Jun Qingxiao's back, the corners of his mouth twitching. A moment later, his eyes turned to Bufong. "It's your turn." The old man talked to Bufong. He didn't know why he didn't like this kid. "Finally, it's my turn. I'm in a hurry." Bufong walked out of the crowd, speaking with an emotionless face. This time, no one dared to laugh at him. The ability that Bufong displayed in his carving skills had won the admiration of most of the people. Only God knew what tricks this kid had. "You're in a hurry? Let's finish it fast." The old man's handlebar mustache twitched. His eyes gazed at Bufong as if he was really interested in him. Bufong arched his brows, walking to the flame. After the flame was scattered, its power was reduced. To Bufong, it wasn't a challenge at all. He stretched out his hand and covered the top of the flame. From a distance, The stiff-faced man saw Bu Fong standing in front of the flame. The corners of his mouth twitched. A moment later, he poured his energy into the formation in front of him. Boom! Boom! The flame in front of Bu Fong rocketed, surging violently. The flame shot up into the sky. Everyone was startled and took a few steps back. Bu Fong's face was indifferent. The vermilion robe slightly swayed, emitting a flow of energy to isolate the heat. If you're in a hurry, you should take action now. As long as you can press down this fiery flame, you'll pass. What do you think? Said the old man. At this moment, the flame's temperature was extremely high. It was close to the real heaven and earth obsidian flame. Ordinary people couldn't endure that kind of temperature. Without enough competence, they couldn't control the flame. Bu Fong looked at the old man. Everyone's faces turned pale. Jun Qingxiao's face reddened. The sixth elder was targeting Bu Fong again. Okay, said Bu Fong. You should release the heaven and earth obsidian flame. It's not good enough, said Bu Fong. Bu Fong's words had stunned everybody. The beautiful woman was bewildered, and the stiff-faced man was also bewildered. The old man squinted, looking at Bu Fong. The corners of his mouth curled up. He has some character, eh? He rose his hand, waving at the stiff-faced man. The stiff-faced man was a little nervous when he received the message. The formation spun, and the heaven and earth obsidian flame was fully activated. Boom! Boom! The entire high platform seemed to be unable to endure this high temperature. It was about to melt. The others who were watching the flame were forced to take several steps back due to the high temperature. Although they weren't weak, the temperature of the heaven and earth obsidian flame still made them feel uncomfortable. Bu Fong's hair fluttered. The flame was like a roaring beast, surging and baring its fangs at Bu Fong. Bu Fong looked at the flame. The dark red flame reflected in his pupils. Not bad. It's good enough. In the next instant, Bu Fong let out a chuckle, and his mental energy surged out like flowing water. Swish, his mental energy pressed on the flame. Bu Fong seemed to hear a roaring sound. The flame resisted his mental energy. It surged and burned a wisp of his mental energy into nothingness. What? Bu Fong was a little surprised. He didn't expect that the flame could be so violent. The beautiful woman sneered at Bu Fong. She crossed her arms in front of her chest, which made her ample bosom curl. However, at this moment, people were paying attention to Bu Fong. How could a chef suppress the violent heaven and earth obsidian flame? If Bu Fong was an alchemist, he could try. Bu Fong didn't try to probe anymore. His mental energy shot out like a long spear, thrusting into the heaven and earth obsidian flame. He strode forward, slowly approaching the flame. Right after that, as everybody gawked and dropped their jaws, they took in a breath of cold air. Is this kid crazy? Oh my God, what am I seeing? What the heck is that? Is that guy human? Everybody's hair stood on end because they saw something they couldn't forget. Even the old man with the handlebar mustache and the beautiful woman were bewildered. Bu Fong walked to the heaven and earth obsidian flame. He extended both of his hands. His mental energy surged, trying to compress the flame little by little. Compress. The heaven and earth obsidian flame slowly shrank. In the end, it turned into a violent fireball full of explosive power. Then, a scene that made people's hair stand on end happened. Bu Fong stuck out his tongue and licked his lips. His eyes seemed to be burning as he shoved the heaven and earth obsidian flame, which had been compressed into a fireball, into his mouth. Shoving it into his mouth after a long moment of silence, people screamed in fear. What the F***? That fellow actually ate fire. Not only did he eat fire, but he didn't eat ordinary fire. He ate the heaven and earth obsidian flame, which was so violent that it could tear people apart. Moreover, the most important thing was, when he ate fire, why did he look so excited? Was it glorious to eat fire? Was it fun to eat fire? It would burn you to death. The old man's hand shivered, and he almost pulled out his handlebar mustache. He was really shocked by Bu Fong, shoving the heaven and earth obsidian flame into his mouth. From ancient times until now, this kid was probably the only one who could do that. Will this kid die? Even if he was in a hurry, he didn't need to eat fire. He would be torn apart by the violent heaven and earth obsidian flame. Everybody looked at Bu Fong, waiting for the scene where Bu Fong would be torn apart by the flame. However, after a long time, burp, Bu Fong opened his mouth, exhaling a mouthful of murky air, burping. Chapter 672. A turbid breath, followed by a burp. Everybody gawked, dropping their jaws. They felt as if their view of the world had just been refreshed. They were chefs, so they had seen people eat whatever they wanted. However, it was the first time they had seen someone eat fire. Moreover, it wasn't an ordinary flame. It was the heaven and earth obsidian flame that could burn people into ashes. The heaven and earth obsidian flame was scorching hot, fierce, and terrifying. Let alone eating it. Even touching it would turn one into charcoal. How could this fellow do that? Moreover, from his appearance, it seemed the heaven and earth obsidian flame didn't taste bad. The corners of the old man's mouth twitched. He looked at Bu Fong as if he was looking at a monster. Although this young chef wasn't really strong, he had given him a lot of surprises. Wait a minute, the old man was bewildered. Looking at Bu Fong, his eyes widened. He couldn't help but take in a breath of cold air. The others were also frightened by the old man's expression. Could it be that something terrible was about to happen? Everybody was skeptical. Some were frightened, and some imitated the old man, gazing at Bu Fong. At this moment, Jun Qingxiao was a little bewildered. Bu Fong had given him so many surprises. His knife skills were exquisite. Not only could he control the heaven and earth obsidian flame perfectly, but he had also eaten it. Where did this monstrous genius come from? This kind of monstrous genius, if he were in the valley of gluttony, he wouldn't be unknown. He would amaze the world with one brilliant feat indeed. It was the glutton god's banquet. So many monstrous geniuses had come here. However, what did the sixth elder's face mean? Jun Qingxiao turned to look at the sixth elder. The stiff-faced man and the beautiful woman were also looking at him. The elder's face was a little exaggerated. Was he surprised, or did he appreciate that chef? Everybody was a little skeptical. However, right after that, the old man's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. His beard was about to fly away. You spit out the heaven and earth obsidian flame. The old man looked at the empty high platform. He suddenly had a bad premonition. This kid eats fire. After eating fire, will he return it? A heaven and earth obsidian flame. Although it wasn't one of the top heaven and earth obsidian flames, it had taken him a lot of effort to find one. Now that it had been eaten, his heart ached. Everyone was stunned. Could it be that Bu Fong did not intend to return the heaven and earth obsidian flame? Impossible. That flame, F*CK. Is he really not going to return it? Everyone thought about it. According to Bu Fong's character, there was really a possibility that he wouldn't return it. Instantly, everyone's gaze fell on Bu Fong. They looked at him strangely, waiting for his reply. Bu Fong exhaled softly and glanced at the old man. The corners of Zhang Xian's lips curled up. You ate the fire with your own ability. Why do you have to return it? This answer stunned everyone, and they didn't know what to say. Why did his words make so much sense that she had no words to refute them? The old man was dumbfounded. His beard almost flew off in anger. This kid ate the heaven and earth obsidian flame, and he still thought he was right? His body moved, taking a step forward. Instantly, everyone's vision became blurry. A moment later, they found that the old man had appeared in front of Bu Fong. His raised palm patted on Bu Fong's shoulder. Buzz, a surge of mental energy gushed out of the old man's body. He wanted to check the heaven and earth obsidian flame in Bu Fong's body. However, the expression on the old man's face quickly turned silent. It was because he couldn't sense the aura of the heaven and earth obsidian flame from Bu Fong's body. It seemed that the heaven and earth obsidian flame had been digested. Was it really eaten? The old man wore a constipated face. The corners of his mouth twitched. It was a sign of heartache. I ate the fire with my own ability. I don't want to spit it out. I can't spit it out, Bu Fong said seriously. The more he said, the more heartache the old man felt. He suddenly regretted it. Why did he give the heaven and earth obsidian flame to this kid? However, after a long time, the old man stared at Bufang. His eyes kept changing. It seemed he had figured something out. The old man chuckled. Her laughter made Bufang's hair stand on end. What dirty things did this old man have in his head? Why did he laugh so wretchedly? Many people didn't understand. However, at this moment, the old man's face became more amiable. Young man, aren't you in a hurry? Then, let's go to the third test. The old man stroked his mustache, smiling as he spoke. Bufang's brows arched. Something was strange. Something was definitely strange. How could this old man be so calm? However, what the old man had said was exactly what he wanted. Thus, he didn't refuse. At least half of the contestants had been eliminated in this round of selection. The old man clasped his hands behind his back, squinting as he calmly walked in the front. Everyone looked at the old man's back, feeling that a storm was brewing. It was really terrifying. He pushed the door open and entered the room. It was a brand new room, and it was also a clean and tidy kitchen. Rows of stoves were arranged neatly. The stiff-faced man and the beautiful woman walked behind the old man, leading a group of people. The third test isn't hard. After you pass it, you can enter the gluttony square and challenge the chefs on the tablet of gluttony. Once you win, congratulations. You will replace him and become the chef on the tablet of gluttony. The old man said. His words were very provocative, and people couldn't help but get excited. Someone couldn't wait to ask, so what's the test for this round? When the old man heard that person's question, he stretched out his hand and pinched his mustache. Good question. The first test is knife skills, and the second test is flame control. The third test. Of course, it won't be normal. Everyone listened attentively to the old man's words. They were waiting to see what the third test would be. Actually, the third test doesn't have any restrictions. You just have to cook one dish. As long as your dish meets my requirements, you can pass, said the old man. Wow. So, the third test is cooking? Everybody was bewildered. A moment later, they were speechless. Wasn't it just cooking one dish? Why did he have to be so mysterious? The stiff-faced man and the beautiful woman nodded. Please find a stove. You're not allowed to use true energy or your own cooking utensils, said the stiff-faced man seriously. The stiff-faced man said solemnly. His sharp eyes scanned through everyone's body, giving them goosebumps all over their bodies. They weren't allowed to use their own cooking utensils. They weren't allowed to use true energy. Did he want them to return to the basics of cooking? Everybody was bewildered. When they were young, they had been taught how to use true energy to cook. But now, they weren't allowed to use true energy. They weren't used to it. Those are your cooking ingredients. I hope you can cook good food that will satisfy people. The stiff-faced man pointed at a place far from them, where many cooking ingredients were placed. Those ingredients had abundant spirit energy and moving energy. They were spirit energy cooking ingredients, but they weren't allowed to use true energy to cook. The Valley of Gluttony really knew how to play. The ingredients were very simple. A fist-sized spirit beast egg was paired with 3 different ingredients. One was sparkling and translucent pearl-like spirit rice. One was swaying spirit vegetables that emitted a dark green luster, and the last was a piece of spirit beast meat that emitted a dense aura. The cooking ingredients weren't complicated. Under the premise that they couldn't use true energy, they were just right for them. Now, start cooking. You have the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. The beautiful woman swayed her body. Her ample breasts shivered as if they were about to jump out. Her red lips parted as she spoke. As his voice faded, everyone walked out in a single file. They dashed toward the cooking ingredients. Shortly, all the cooking ingredients were taken. The spirit beast meat didn't have many ingredients, so they were all snatched. Of course, the taste of the spirit beast meat was much better than the rice and the spirit vegetables. Those who managed to get their hands on the spirit beast meat all had excited smiles on their faces. As for those who didn't manage to get their hands on the spirit beast meat, their faces were filled with dejection. When Jun Qingxiao and Bufang came, they didn't have many choices. Bufang glanced at Jun Qingxiao, his face emotionless. Jun Qingxiao was a little hesitant. He studied for a while, then chose the spirit energy rice. We only have spirit energy rice and a portion of spirit vegetables left. Bu Fong nodded his head and took away the last portion of ingredients left on the table. It was a type of spirit vegetable. The leaves of the vegetable were dark green and exuded a sparkling luster. It was rather fresh and had a high concentration of spirit energy. I can cook egg fried rice, but I don't know if my egg fried rice is better than theirs. Jun Qingxiao exhaled deeply. A moment later, he glanced at Bu Fong, then returned to his stove. Egg fried rice. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth rose, but he didn't say anything. He returned to his stove. Around them, everyone was already bustling with activity. Bu Fong's hand shook. He took out a velvet rope from his system-dimensional bag, using it to tie his hair. A moment later, he exhaled. No need for true energy. Ah, I miss this feeling. A moment later, Bu Fong's hand rose, and the fine iron kitchen knife on the stove fell into his hand. He spun it, creating a knife light. The knife light flashed. Bu Fong had cut the clean spirit vegetable into small pieces. The green vegetable juice dripped with a little astringent taste. Taking a porcelain bowl, the egg moved between Bu Fong's nimble fingers. Then he knocked it on the bowl. There was a soft cracking sound. Instantly, the egg juice fell into the bowl. Without using true energy, Bu Fong picked up the bowl, using the chopsticks to beat the egg. Sizzle. The aroma was strong. Everybody had reached the final stage. The old man squinted, clasping his hands as he watched. Smelling the aroma in the air, his face reddened. I'm looking forward to it. The old man chuckled. Eventually, the incense stick burned down. The old man raised his hand, and a wave of energy diffused from his hand, shaking everybody. In the next moment, everyone stopped what they were doing. They had finished their cooking. All right, the cooking time is up, and the test is over. Let this old man taste the dishes you've cooked with simple ingredients. Chapter 673. Glutton God's buildings, square many high platforms were floating, and people could hear the sound of zither and harp echoing unceasingly. The aroma of food permeated the entire Glutton God's building. The top 100 chefs of the Tablet of Gluttony wore a stern face. They stood on their high platforms, sitting cross-legged and listening to Chu Chongsheng, the white-haired old man sitting in the middle of the square. His voice reverberated, filling the entire sky. Around the high platforms, many experts were watching with interest. They didn't understand what Chu Chongsheng was talking about, but it didn't stop them from sensing the terrifying aura from his body. Chu Chongsheng was an extraordinary man. Even the saint's sons didn't dare to disrespect him. Munch munch, in this solemn scene. Chewing noises arose unceasingly. Some people's mouths twitched. They habitually turned to look at that direction. Over there was a little girl holding a plate and pouring the food on into her mouth. The way she ate was extremely terrifying, and it caused people's hearts to feel slightly comical. She could eat a lot. Some people were already numb. From the beginning, the little girl's mouth hadn't stopped. She had been munching non-stop. She should have ordered 20 dishes by now. 20 dishes. One person had eaten enough for 20 people. Did this little kid want to go against the natural order? Xiaoyu was speechless. He could feel the gazes around him, which made his hair stand on end. At this moment, even a fool would know that there was something wrong with this little girl. How could a normal little girl eat so much food? The heavenly springs' saint's son's eyes were cold. They were like sharp swords shooting unceasingly, giving Xiaoyu a stinging pain on his skin. Lianqing played with the jade talisman in his hand. The corners of his mouth curled up as he contemplated. The Grand Baron's sex master clutched his stomach, looking at the little girl with a painful face. The corners of his mouth twitched. Could it be that this lass has some sort of secret on her? With so many dishes entering their stomachs, the spirit energy contained in them was enough to make even a divine soul expert with a two-step soul ladder explode. Some of them were already itching to give it a try, wanting to investigate the little girl. Xiaoyu really felt a bit of a headache. The covetous gazes from the surroundings made him feel like he was sitting on pins and needles. If he could, he even wanted to investigate it. However, this girl was brought here by Bu Fong after all. He said he would take good care of her, so naturally he would. The woman in the chef robe had a numb expression on her face as she looked at the little girl's sincere gaze. She knew that the little girl was about to order another serving. He felt sorry for the chef who was in charge of this table. Suddenly, everyone's expression changed as they looked at the plaza below. The bronze gate of the Gluttony Gods building opened grumblingly. The narration in the square came to an abrupt stop. Chu Chongsheng slightly tilted his head to look at the open gate. He reached out his hand to stroke his beard. On the high platform hovering in the void, each chef's eyes shone brightly as they looked at the door. They knew that the chefs who walked out of those doors were going to challenge them next. No one dared to be careless. In the past Glutton Gods banquets, there had been cases of tablet of gluttony powerhouses being defeated. They knew that some people had come fully prepared, and no one knew what kind of competence they would show. Following their line of sight, they felt the anticipation of tens of thousands of people. Everyone was looking at the huge door, looking at the figure slowly emerging from the pitch-black door. The old man looked at Jun Qingxiao, who was a little nervous. Looking at the steaming egg fried rice in front of Jun Qingxiao, the old man's handlebar mustache rose. Jun Qingxiao was a little bit nervous, but his eyes were still confident. He puffed out his chest, his face blushing. The old man smiled. A moment later, he took out a porcelain spoon and scooped a portion of egg fried rice into his mouth. The egg fried rice was so fragrant. As soon as it entered his mouth, the rice grains scattered, running around in his mouth. Shortly after, it stimulated the old man's taste buds. Since they didn't use true energy to cook, the contestants had to control the heat precisely. Once there was a slight mistake, it would affect the taste of the dish. It was the most important test for a chef's foundation. Anyway, these kids wanted to challenge the chefs on the tablet of gluttony. If they weren't strong enough, they would just embarrass themselves if they challenged them. Yeah, not bad. The old man ate a mouthful of egg fried rice. He was surprised and arched his brows, looking at Jun Qingxiao. The taste of this egg fried rice was beyond his estimation. He didn't think that this kid could reach such a level. It seemed like old Shui had spent a lot of effort on this kid. You need to be more confident. Your dish is delicious. Do your best. The old man clasped his hands, putting down the porcelain spoon and patting Jun Qingxiao's shoulder. Jun Qingxiao's only shortcoming was that he wasn't confident enough. He always gave people a feeling of fear. It dissatisfied the old man. As a chef, if he didn't have confidence in his dishes, how could he impress his customers? Only when he was confident in his dishes would his dishes have enough spirit, qi, and soul. Jun Qingxiao was flattered. He bent his waist and nodded, his face excited. His dish got the old man's approval, which was beyond his estimation. A moment later, the old man walked to Bu Fong. Bu Fong was wiping the water on his hands. Seeing the old man, he lifted his head, his face emotionless. In front of him was a bowl of soup. The soup seemed to have a layer of light covering it, emitting a faint radiance. "Is this your dish?" The old man looked at Bu Fong, asking in surprise. Bu Fong nodded in a natural manner. The aroma of this dish was weak, and it didn't look beautiful at all. It seemed that Bu Fong's previous performance had a big chance. Was this kid's cooking skill trash? Was it just his knife skill that good? Thinking about this, the old man couldn't help but frown. He couldn't let this kid eat the heaven and earth obsidian flame for nothing. He had planned to use the heaven and earth obsidian flame as an excuse to keep this kid in the valley of gluttony. After the first two tests, the old man thought that this kid's foundation wasn't bad. He wasn't weaker than some monstrous talents on the tablet of gluttony. Such a genius was just a chef from outside the valley. Of course, the old man was astounded that a chef from outside the valley could have such competence. If he could keep Bu Fong, it would be good. However, Bu Fong's dish seemed to make him a little disappointed. Standing by Bu Fong, Jun Qingxiao craned his neck to watch Bu Fong cook. He and the old man had the same feeling. They were a little disappointed because Bu Fong's dish wasn't amazing. It didn't match his previous performance. Anyway, Jun Qingxiao understood. No matter what, Bufang had just gotten an egg and a vegetable. What kind of delicious food could he cook? Thus, Jun Qingxiao couldn't help but sympathize with Bufang. As if he could feel Jun Qingxiao's eyes and the old man's disappointment, Bufang halted his wiping action, arching his brows in surprise. He squinted at the other two. Have a taste. Perhaps you'll be surprised. My dishes never disappoint people, Bufang said. The confidence in his words shocked Jun Qingxiao. Bufang's confidence was the kind of unconditional confidence he had in his dish. This kind of feeling shocked Jun Qingxiao. It was such an ugly dish. How could he be so confident? Listening to Bufang, the old man's eyes brightened. It was good to have confidence. He was afraid that young people nowadays didn't have it. All right, then I'll have a taste of your dish. I hope you won't disappoint me. If it doesn't taste good, remember to spit out the heaven and earth obsidian flame. I'll eat the fire with my ability. I won't spit it out. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched as he refused. The old man wasn't enraged. He took a porcelain spoon and scooped the soup. The moment the porcelain spoon touched the vegetable soup, the old man's eyebrows immediately twitched, and his eyes seemed to blossom with a bright light. Oh, interesting. His hand slightly exerted force. Instantly, the membrane on the soup was torn. Light shot out from the soup, shooting directly at the old man's eyes. The mustache on the old man's face twitched. Steam gushed out from the tear, and the fragrance assailed their nostrils. The aroma of eggs and the aroma of the dish overflowed. The rolling steam surged, and the aroma seemed to explode, diffusing everywhere. Jun Qingxiao was bewildered. His entire body shivered. This aroma, this light, was it really a simple dish? He didn't expect that such an ordinary dish could have such a profound mystery. No wonder why Bufang was so confident. What's the name of this dish? The old man didn't drink it. He just scooped the soup into a small bowl and asked. It's called unpolished jade. Bufang put away the towel and took off the velvet rope that tied his hair. His hair fluttered as he answered casually. Unpolished jade? Good unpolished jade. The old man smiled, light surging in his eyes. He brought the fragrant soup to his nose and took a deep breath. The fragrance immediately drilled into his nose, causing all the pores on his body to slightly open. The egg aroma was as smooth as silk brushing against his skin. Sizzle. He took a sip of the soup. When the boiling hot soup entered his mouth, the old man's eyes narrowed. The fragrance of the vegetables and the rich fragrance of the eggs mixed together, forming a unique fragrance. The taste was also surprisingly good. The egg floors were like silk as they entered his mouth with a chi-chi sound. They flowed between his teeth, leaving behind a nostalgic taste. This dish was different from the others' dishes. After finishing the soup in the bowl, the old man put down the bowl and nodded in satisfaction. He gave Bufang a deep look, and the corners of his mouth curled up. This young chef must stay in the valley of gluttony. This kid's cooking talent is really terrifying. All right, this old man has tasted everyone's dishes. It's a pity that only 10 people can advance to the next round. Therefore, some of you will be eliminated. However, don't be discouraged even if you were eliminated. You can still challenge them through the tablet of gluttony in the future. As long as you have the strength, glory will eventually belong to you. And the ones who have advanced, please follow me. We're going to open the Gluttony Gods building to face the experts on the tablet of gluttony. I'm afraid they can't wait any longer. The old man clasped his hands, looking at the ones who had advanced. The eyes of these 10 people were filled with excitement and surging battle intent. The stiff-faced man nodded, slowly walking forward. As he took a step forward, the aura on his body continued to soar. A moment later, he placed one hand on the towering bronze door. The muscles on his arms bulged like rocks or dragons. He shouted. Xiao Chun exerted his vital qi, and the bronze doors slowly creaked open. Chapter 674. The stiff-faced man's muscles bulged, and his terrifying energy burst out. He opened his mouth and roared, which made the bronze door move slowly. The squeaking sound came from a long distance with the vicissitudes of time. Bu Fong and the others stood behind the stiff-faced man, watching the bronze door open a slit. Scorching white light shot through the slit, which dazzled people's eyes. It's the Gate of Hope. The people who want to challenge the chefs on the Tablet of Gluttony have to go through this door, because it's the Gate of Hope to fulfill their dreams. The old man clasped his hands, looking at the bronze door that was slowly opening. Light seemed to surge deep in his eyes. His voice echoed in people's ears. Jun Qingxiao was so excited that his face reddened. The Gate of Hope. It was reasonable. Wasn't their dream to replace the chefs on the Tablet of Gluttony? What they needed was hope. Walking through this door was the beginning of their dreams. Bu Fong's face was indifferent, his heart as calm as still water. It was the gate of hope to the others, but to him, it was just a matter of time. Finally, they could enter the Gluttony Square. Wenren Shang should still be there. As Bu Fong thought about it, he was a little absent-minded. However, no one noticed his absent-mindedness. They were all gazing at the bronze door. As the bronze door opened, the excitement on their faces became thicker. Finally, the bronze door was completely opened. Light poured in and shone on everyone's faces, causing their faces to turn red and excited. The beautiful woman giggled. Her slender legs bounced on the ground. Her body floated up, her laughter echoing around. The stiff-faced man opened the door, exhaling crazily. He pounded his fists together, letting out a low grunt. He took a step forward, and his entire body shot up into the sky like a spring. The two of them turned into two jets of light, flying toward the high platform floating in the Gluttony Square. The audience in the Gluttony Square screamed when they saw the two of them. Apparently, many of them knew the stiff-faced man and the beautiful woman. Of course, most of them knew the beautiful woman. Unexpectedly, the two of them were also experts on the Tablet of Gluttony. In other words, they would become the opponents of Bu Fong and the others. The stiff-faced man's chef robe fluttered as he landed on the high platform, sitting cross-legged. His face was serious, and he didn't smile. The glamorous woman's body swayed, and the towering peaks on her chest surged. She landed on the high platform, and a charming smile blossomed on her face. "All right, you little fellas, follow me." The old man clasped his hands behind his back and said with a smile. In the next moment, the old man slowly walked towards the center of the square. His pace wasn't fast, so everyone followed behind him slowly. 1 step, 2 steps, 1 step, 2 steps, steady. The moment the old man appeared, the square erupted into an uproar. Looking at the 10 people behind the old man, the audience became even more excited. The appearance of these people meant that the Glutton God's Banquet was about to reach its climax. Many experts sat on the high platform, smiling as they watched the challengers slowly walk out of the platform. Some people's eyes focused, while others were astounded. At first glance, Xiaoyu saw Bu Fong walking slowly in the crowd. His face was dumbstruck. What was going on? Why did Owner Bu go down there? Did he become a challenger? With Owner Bu's cooking skills, he still wanted a challenge? The little girl was stuffing food into her mouth. When she saw Bu Fong, her eyes widened. She raised her greasy finger, pointing at Bu Fong. She was so excited. The Heavens Pivot Saint's son, Lianxing, was surprised. He also saw Bu Fong, his face strange. The man he had sent to kill Bu Fong failed? How could that kid still be alive? That kid was really lucky. Anyway, didn't the Heavenly Springs Saint's son send someone to take that kid's head? Did his men fail too? Since the Heavenly Springs men failed, it wasn't a big deal that his men failed. The moment the Heavenly Springs Saint's son saw Bu Fong, the aura around him bloomed. With a muffled sound, the entire high platform seemed to tremble slightly. It looked like it was going to collapse in the next moment. "Damn you, kid. You killed my Lu Ji. You killed my Lan Ji. If I don't chop you into pieces, I can't vent my hatred." The Heavenly Springs Saint's son gazed at Bu Fong. A moment later, he rose his palm and pounded on the dining table. The sandalwood table was smashed into pieces in just a blink of an eye. He stood up, his face dark and gloomy. The oppressive aura around him made people shiver. Chi-Ji looked at the Saint's son, who was like an enraged lion. She shivered, standing aside, not daring to breathe. Saint's son, this is the glutton god's banquet. Looking at the Saint's son, who was so enraged that he wanted to take action immediately, Chi-Ji reminded him. So what if it's the glutton god's banquet? If I, the Heavenly Springs Saint's son, want to kill someone, he must die. The Heavenly Springs Saint's son's eyes were like lightning. The gold armor on his body radiated dazzlingly. He took one step forward, hovering in the air. His terrifying aura diffused. He rose his hand, and a halberd appeared in his hand. The halberd was exquisite and luxurious, with many formations inlaid on it. Beautiful crystals glowed and provided energy. The entire glutton god's building was like a storm. His murderous aura was so sharp. The Heavenly Springs Saint's son's murderous aura was pressing on Bufang. Everybody was bewildered. A moment later, they burst into an earth-shaking uproar. What happened? The Heavenly Springs Saint's son wanted to take action at the glutton god's banquet? Oh my God, it was going to be a good show. Was the Heavenly Springs Saint's son targeting that little chef? He was just an innocent challenger. Bufang tilted his head, indifferently looking at the Heavenly Springs Saint's son hovering in the sky like a god. The latter's intimidating aura kept pressing down, trying to press Bufang to the ground. However, to Bufang, the aura was useless. People around him retreated with grimaced faces. However, Bufang was still standing calmly. He lifted his head, his indifferent eyes meeting the murderous aura of the Heavenly Springs Saint's son. The sixth elder's handlebar mustache curled. Right after that, he rose his hand and shook. The aura of the Heavenly Springs Saint's son was isolated. What does the Heavenly Springs Saint's son want to do? They are the challengers. Why do you want to oppress them? The sixth elder's senile voice arose. The Heavenly Springs Saint's son held the halberd, walking in the air. Murderous aura surged in his eyes. That little chef in the red and white chef robe killed 2 of my maids. Tell me, does he deserve to die? Asked the Heavenly Springs Saint's son. Everyone was in an uproar as they looked at Bufang in shock. That little chef dared to kill the Heavenly Springs Saint's son's maids? Where did he get the courage? Offending the Heavenly Springs Saint's son was equal to offending the Heavenly Spring Holy Land. At that time, he would have to face a terrible revenge. On the high platform, the celestial saintess wore a white veil. Her black hair fluttered, her beautiful eyes gazing at Bufang. Xiao Yu frowned. The long sword on his back shook. With a clanging sound, the long sword was unsheathed. Xiao Yu took a step forward, wanting to ride the sword. However, he was stopped by a swaying silhouette. Lianqing smiled at Xiao Yu, talking faintly. Brother Yu, don't be impulsive. Don't bring a disaster to our heaven's pivot holy land. Get lost. Xiao Yu tried to suppress his anger, speaking coldly. Oh, well, let's see if you have that ability. Lianqing flicked his sleeves, and a green sword fell into his hand. He pointed it at the ground, his murderous aura surging. The atmosphere in the glutton god's building square seemed to become tense at this moment. The situation changed too fast, like a tornado. The audience was bewildered, and they couldn't adapt to the situation. Just because of a little chef, there was such a tense situation. Who exactly was this little chef? The sixth elder was a little speechless, looking at Bufang. In a hurry. You're in a hurry to stir up trouble, aren't you? As soon as you appeared, you made the situation a mess. Ouyang Chinfeng smiled, looking at Bufang. He didn't think that Bufang would come here as a challenger. He was a little excited. He had seen Bufang's competence, so he was looking forward to it. Wenren Shang was still pouring wine into his mouth. His body reeked of alcohol. However, when he looked at Bufang, he grinned. Interesting. That kid showed up again. The tense atmosphere made the entire gluttony gods building a little depressing. Many people didn't even dare to breathe loudly. They were waiting for the next development. Chu Changsheng just sat quietly in his seat, sipping the wine. The wine flowed through his mouth and into his stomach, making his face a little tender. Don't make trouble. The glutton god's banquet will continue. If you have any conflict, please solve it after the glutton god's banquet. All of a sudden, Chu Changsheng placed his wine cup on the table, speaking faintly. His voice reverberated in everybody's ears in just a blink of an eye. Everybody was bewildered. A moment later, they took in a breath of cold air. Chu Changsheng had opened his mouth. The heavenly springs saint's son's face was dark and gloomy. His eyes turned to Chu Changsheng. Precursor, my mate can't die for no reason. This man must be chopped into 10,000 pieces. Chu Changsheng stopped pouring wine. A moment later, he still didn't lift his head. No matter what you want to do, wait until the glutton god's banquet is over. I can't wait any longer. It won't take long to kill this ant. Precursor, give me the time of one breath. The heavenly springs saint's son's eyes were like lightning. He didn't say anything else. The halberd in his hand shook, and then it fell rapidly toward Bufang. The saint's son's body moved like a giant rock spreading its wings. The tip of his foot touched the end of the halberd. Endless energy burst out, striking directly at Bufang. Everybody was in an uproar. They all screamed in fear. The heavenly springs saint's son didn't care about Chu Changsheng's words. He attacked in the glutton god's building square. It was a slap in the face. It was a disdain to the valley of gluttony. Arrogant. People said that the heavenly springs saint's son was extremely arrogant. Today, they knew it was true. Facing a legendary character like Chu Changsheng, he didn't care at all. He still chose to attack. Bufang looked at the heavenly springs saint's son falling from the sky like a meteor. The corners of his mouth twitched. He glanced at Chu Changsheng from a distance. His eyes seemed to be contemplating. Hey, old man, you killed his maid with one slap, didn't you? I don't want to be the scapegoat. Bufang said faintly. His voice wasn't loud, but it echoed everywhere. A moment later, everybody gawked and dropped their jaws when they heard him. The heavenly springs saint's son, who was standing on the halberd with a murderous aura like a rainbow, shivered. Chapter 675. That old man had slapped her death. Who was the old man that Bufang had just mentioned? Everyone suddenly felt a wave of confusion, but after the confusion, they were horrified. They followed Bufang's line of sight and saw Chu Changsheng, who was sitting cross-legged and drinking. The old man that Bufang had mentioned was Chu Changsheng. Chu Changsheng had killed the heavenly springs saint's son's maid. Everybody was shaken. They thought that something big was about to happen. If it was Chu Changsheng, would the heavenly springs saint's son still have the confidence to deal with Bufang? Everybody was curious. The great elder of the Valley of Gluttony had sold the heavenly springs saint's son's maid just to help a young chef. Did Chu Changsheng favor Bufang that much? Or was that kid Chu Changsheng's illegitimate son? Thinking of this, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. They couldn't help but think about it. No matter what, the Valley of Gluttony had a stiff relationship with many holy lands. At this critical moment, the great elder of the Valley of Gluttony's every word could shake the world. Although it was just a maid who had died, she was the heavenly springs saint's son's saintess. They could understand that Chu Changsheng wanted to rebel against the holy lands. Bufang's words quieted the noisy gluttony god's building. The sixth elder, who was walking in the front, was startled again. What the heck? Was this kid poisonous? He had just walked out of the gluttony god's building, and he had already stirred up such a big mess. Would the great elder attack the heavenly springs saint's son's maid for a little chef he had never met? This kid should have found something reliable to say. Although some people didn't believe it, some believed it. They couldn't help but believe it. It was because Chu Changsheng was too calm. His calm demeanor gave many people a headache. The heavenly springs saint's son was bewildered. Then his face became stern. You want to frame me? What reason does Senior Chu have to help you attack my people? Don't think that you can survive if you drag Senior Chu into this. Today you must die. The heavenly springs saint's son's face twitched. The murderous aura emerged in his eyes. The long halberd thundered and thundered like a deafening roar. The terrifying aura was like a falling meteor. It made people shiver. So terrifying This was the power of the Heavenly Springs Saint Sun, an expert at the Divine Soul realm with a 5-step soul ladder. Bu Fong frowned as he looked at the spirit energy fluctuations that fill the entire sky. It seemed as though the sky was about to distort. The Heavenly Springs Saint Sun was strong indeed. He was the strongest warrior sure Yin had ever met. Oh, except for Black A Little Ha and that giant crocodile. A divine soul realm expert with a 5-step soul ladder. His power was indeed extraordinary. Without the invincible defense of the vermilion robe, Bu Fong's heart sank. If he was really hit, he didn't know if he could block it with the Black Turtle Constellation Walk. With the strength of his fleshly body, even if he hid inside the Black Turtle Constellation Walk, the vibrating force would still shatter his body. Xiao Yu's pupils shrank, and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. With Owner Bu's strength, how could he resist the Heavenly Springs Saint Sun's attack? Even he would be gravely injured and on the verge of death if he were to receive that attack. Everyone was in an uproar. They did not expect that the Glutton God's Banquet would start with bloodshed. It was really exciting. Rumble. Waves of air rippled. The Heavenly Springs Saint Sun's eyes were as sharp as sabers. The gold armor on his body radiated a cold halo under the sunlight. Boom! The terrifying pressure made Jun Qingxiao and the others shiver. They couldn't even stand stably. The 6th elder narrowed his eyes. He was also a little angry in his heart. The people behind him were the geniuses who had challenged the chefs on the tablet of gluttony at the Glutton God's Banquet. The Heavenly Springs Saint Sun was just a guest, but he dared to attack them. They didn't even put the Valley of Gluttony in their eyes. Did the Holy Land want to turn their back on the Valley of Gluttony? However, even if they wanted to turn their back on the Valley of Gluttony, they thought that a Saint Sun could do it. They underestimated the Valley of Gluttony too much. On the high platform, many people had different looks in their eyes. The celestial saintess' eyes trembled slightly. She raised her slender and fair hand, and there seemed to be an aura circulating around her body. That power was incomparably mysterious, and it enveloped her body like a white mist. She seemed to want to take action. However, the heavenly secret saintess seemed to find something. She exclaimed in surprise. A moment later, she put down her hand and grabbed the wine cup. She covered her mouth with her hand and took a sip. The Heavenly Springs Saint Sun continued to strike. The 6th elder's handlebar mustache was shivering. His long robe fluttered in the wind. "You court death," the 6th elder bellowed indignantly. In the next moment, light suddenly burst out from his body. "Don't mess around." However, as soon as the 6th elder's aura burst out, a faint voice arose. Everybody was bewildered. Their eyes turned to Chu Changsheng, who was standing far from them. He was still calm and carefree. His white beard and hair fluttered in the wind. Swish! He sprinkled the clear wine in his cup. Instantly, a drop of wine floated in front of him. Chu Changsheng indifferently glanced at the Heavenly Springs Saint Sun, flicking his finger. Ding! The wine burst, splashing everywhere. The broken droplets of liquid suddenly enlarged in the air, then transformed into ferocious wild beasts. Opening their mouths, they roared and stormed toward the Heavenly Springs Saint Sun. Swish! Everybody gawked and dropped their jaws. They had never thought that Chu Changsheng would take action. He attacked the Heavenly Springs Saint Sun. His first move was the technique of condensing divine energy. The Heavenly Springs Saint Sun's eyes shrank. His entire body glowed. A moment later, he roared. His muscles bulged as he rolled in the air. A moment later, he held his halberd with one hand. A dazzling star emerged behind him. On that star, there seemed to be a towering figure overlooking everything. Boom! The halberd glowed brilliantly as it hit the beasts made of wine. It exploded fiercely. The Heavenly Springs Saint Sun grunted in the air. His body staggered as if he was stepping on solid ground. Eventually, he landed on the ground. Holding the halberd with one hand, he swung it. The Heavenly Springs Saint Sun gazed at Chu Changsheng. "You're worthy of being Chu Changsheng. I'm convinced." Anyway, you can protect this kid now, but you can't protect him forever. When I have a chance, I will bring his head to you." The heavenly springs saint's sun stood arrogantly in the sky. A massive star was moving behind him. The vague figure on the star was releasing a tremendous pressure. Everybody felt their hearts sink. Even Bufong felt his skin tighten. In the entire area, only Chu Changsheng was still calm and relaxed, sipping his wine. After finishing his wine, Chu Changsheng's eyes moved. He looked at the heavenly springs saint's sun in the sky, who had a murderous aura. Even if the heavenly spring Holy Land Saint Master were here, he wouldn't dare to talk to me like that. Who do you think you are? Domineering. Chu Changsheng's words made everybody take in a breath of cold air. Was he angry? Chu Changsheng was finally enraged. The heavenly springs saint's sun rolled his eyes, swinging his halberd. However, a moment later, they saw Chu Changsheng wave his palm. The spirit energy within 10 miles was twisted and sucked in, turning into a giant hand that covered the sky. "Sit down." Boom. The heavenly springs saint's sun roared as his armor bloomed with dazzling gold light. He thrust his halberd as if he wanted to pierce the sky. Boom. Waves of air surged. The heavenly springs saint's sun was pounded on the high platform. He spurted blood, his body unable to move. "Good boy. If you mess around again, the heavenly springs saint master will send someone to redeem you." Chu Changsheng exhaled, his loose robe swaying. Then, he continued to drink. The glutton god's banquet continues. When Chu Changsheng's voice disappeared, everybody got their wits back from the horrible scene. Everyone's eyes were filled with deep awe and respect. He's worthy of being the great elder of the Valley of Gluttony. A legendary character. Just one palm, and the heavenly springs saint's sun didn't even dare to fart. Ha! The heavenly springs saint's sun is arrogant. When Chu Changsheng was young, he dared to fight against the Saint Master. How could he be threatened by a saint's son? Now he's taught a lesson. Anyway, is that little chef really Chu Changsheng's illegitimate child? The uproar of the crowd turned into whispers. Everybody was excited and gossipy. The heavenly springs saint's son was pressed on the high platform, unable to move. Blood trickled from the corners of his mouth. His eyes were filled with murderous aura as he gazed at Bufong. Ha ha ha! This kind of impolite brat must be properly disciplined. The sixth elder laughed loudly. He stroked his mustache and grinned as he said this. His words were like a sharp arrow shooting out, piercing the heavenly springs saint's son's heart. His face grimaced. "All right, the glutton god's banquet begins now." The sixth elder laughed. He waved his hand. Instantly, the experts of the tablet of gluttony in the sky became solemn. They all sat upright. Was it about to begin? "Now, guys, please choose your challengers. Remember, you have 3 chances to challenge someone. As long as you win once, you can leave your name on the tablet of gluttony," said the sixth elder, stroking his beard. The challengers behind Bufong shuddered, and their eyes shone with a bright light. Jun Qingxiao lifted his head, his eyes filled with fighting will. Bufong rubbed his chin, his eyes raking through the sky. Eventually, he spoke first. "I'm in a hurry." "You." Everybody was bewildered. Following the direction of Bufong's finger, they saw Wenren Shang, who was lying on the high platform. Wenren Shang was still pouring wine into his mouth. When Bufong pointed at him, he blinked. Seeing Bufong choose Wenren Shang, everybody took in a breath of cold air. This kid was really arrogant. As soon as he showed up, he challenged the top 10 chefs of the tablet of gluttony. Sunset Lake, boom! With a muffled sound, the entire Sunset Lake suddenly shook. Ripples emerged and spread in all directions. Rumble, 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 rumble. The ripples expanded unceasingly, turning into waves that pounded on the lake shore. The water splashed high into the sky. In the Sunset Lake, the fish that were constantly jumping around quieted down at this moment. In the next moment, the sound of something shattering resounded, and the surface of the lake instantly exploded, causing monstrous waves to rise. A giant claw covered in scales stretched out from the lake and ruthlessly slammed onto the shore, causing the shore to sink in. Chapter 676. Outside the glutton god city, by the sunset lake, monstrous waves rose on the surface of the lake, and the fish inside flew out. Like numerous sharp arrows, they smashed onto the shore with a loud bang, causing a deep depression to form on the shore. Voila la! The lake water rose up, and a pitch-black figure climbed out from the lake shore. Its claws covered in scales fiercely slammed on the shore. In the next moment, its enormous body leapt out. Water surged like a tide, flooding both sides of it. It was a giant crocodile. This crocodile opened its mouth, showing its sharp teeth under the sunlight, sparkling. Rumble, rumble. The giant crocodile crawled, shaking the ground. After the crocodile left, the noisy lake resumed its tranquility. The surging water left the ground wet. The ground shook, but the giant crocodile didn't roar. It just slowly moved forward, step by step, and crawled into the distance. In the villages surrounding the glutton god city, under the sunlight, the village was peaceful. The aroma of food permeated the air on both sides of the street. Restaurants and inns were operating like a raging fire. A beautiful woman walked out of the kitchen with a basin full of water in her hands. She poured the water out of the door, and the water sparkled under the sunlight. With a splash, the water splashed all over the ground, and there was even hot air surging up. After doing that, the beautiful woman turned around to return to the kitchen. All of a sudden, she was bewildered. When she turned around, the entire sky turned dark. Why did the sky turn dark so fast today? The beautiful lady muttered in doubt. In the next moment, she raised her head and looked at the pitch-black sky. She was stunned on the spot. The basin in his hand fell to the ground with a clatter. Her body was trembling, and in the next moment, she let out a scream. Sky. There was no sky. It was just a giant claw that could cover the entire sky. The beautiful woman's scream hadn't faded when the giant claw grumblingly slammed down. After a loud explosion, the entire restaurant was turned into ruins under this claw. The beautiful woman was squashed in just a blink of an eye. The village became clamorous. The atmosphere of fear was spreading. The 4 giant claws continued to fall, and the giant body crushed everything. Shortly after, the entire village became a pile of ruins. Some people ran away in fright, rolling and crawling. They ran toward the glutton god city. Facing this monster, only the majestic glutton god's tower could give them confidence. However, the giant crocodile roared. Its 4 limbs sped up, dashing toward the glutton god city. On the shore of the sunset lake, a woman wearing a long black dress, revealing her slender, white, and beautiful legs, stopped. Her toes were slightly floating, and this person was floating in the air. The woman was extremely beautiful. Her exquisite face was like a work of art that was carved meticulously. She stood at the edge of the sunset lake and frowned. She looked at the giant crocodile with a serious look in her eyes. That beast seems to be heading toward Bufang. The woman muttered. Her hair fluttered in the wind as her figure floated forward, chasing after the giant alligator. I'm in a hurry. You're the one. Bufang's words made countless people speechless, and many of them had speechless looks on their faces. He was in a hurry. That's why he chose to challenge a chef from the top 10 of the Tablet of Gluttony. Are you in a hurry to be eliminated? That was what most people thought. Although Wenrenshang wasn't famous in the glutton god city, it was because of his personal reasons. Talking about cooking, not many people could be compared to him. He was called the Bai Shaosheng of the cooking world. He could cook any dish. In his hands, he could turn any ingredient into delicious food. Moreover, the taste was marvelous. As he could become one of the top 10 of the Tablet of Gluttony, of course, he had some abilities. When Wenrenshang heard Bufang's challenge, he was a little surprised. Then, the corners of his mouth curled up. He straightened his body, drinking a mouthful of wine from the bamboo tube. You want to challenge me? Asked Wenrenshang. From a distance, the other chefs looked interested. Many people didn't know Bufang's competence, but they knew Wenrenshang's. If he weren't a drunkard, he would have become one of the top 3 chefs of the Tablet of Gluttony. This fellow's talent in cooking was really amazing. However, Ouyang Chinfeng wasn't so optimistic. He had experienced Bu Fong's cooking, so he knew that Bu Fong's cooking level couldn't be judged by common sense. Perhaps he would have a chance to defeat Wenren Shang. Yeyu, I prepared the ingredients, said Bu Fong. Then he flipped his hand, and 2 heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish fell into his hand. Heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish? Wenren Shang was bewildered, and so were the other chefs. The 6th elder was bewildered. Even Chu Changshang couldn't help but furrow his brows. Heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. Interesting. Young people these days did have guts. This ingredient wasn't bad, but it required strict knife skills and processing skills. Ordinary people didn't have the guts to take out such an ingredient. Moreover, where did this kid get the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish? In the glutton god city, it was forbidden to trade the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. Where did this kid get them? The 6th elder arched his brows, and the corners of his mouth twitched. No way. Chu Changsheng seemed to have thought of something. His eyes fell on Bu Fong. This young man wanted to stir up trouble. Xiaoyu had returned to his seat. The little girl was still eating. Seeing Bu Fong, she waved her fist, cheering for Bu Fong. Then, she continued to eat. She didn't know why she felt hungrier the more she ate. It was like a bottomless pit that couldn't be filled. With so much spiritual energy, even Xiaoyu felt a headache coming on. Would this last explode later? However, he didn't have time to care about her. If she wanted to eat, he would just let her eat somewhere else. The cooking competition between Bu Fong and Wenren Shang was the focus of his attention. It had been a long time since he saw Owner Bu compete with others. In this chef's heaven, Owner Bu would meet a strong opponent. The others kept silent for a long time. After a while, they started to choose their opponents. Of course, they couldn't be like Bu Fong, who chose the top 10 chefs of the Tablet of Gluttony. That was meaningless. They couldn't compete with the top 10 chefs of the Tablet of Gluttony. They knew their limits. Jun Qingxiao chose a chef who was at the bottom of the Tablet of Gluttony. He wanted to get on the list first. The others also chose their opponents. In fact, in the first round, besides Bu Fong, the others had chosen their opponents after the 50th rank of the Tablet of Gluttony. And their competence should be around that level. If they could win, they were confident that they could challenge the top 50 chefs of the Tablet of Gluttony. They had to be steady. Since they weren't in a hurry, they had to take their time. If so, the first match will be the little chef against the first-grade chef, Wenren Shang. The 6th elder stroked his mustache, smiling. A moment later, the entire ground shook. The center of the square suddenly protruded, forming a massive arena around Chu Changsheng. 2 stoves emerged on both sides of the arena, with Chu Changsheng as the center. Those stoves were exquisite, as if they were glowing. At first glance, they knew they weren't ordinary items. Apparently, the Valley of Gluttony cared a lot about this glutton god's banquet. Bu Fong shook his hand, and the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish flew toward Wenren Shang. Wenren Shang laughed, his eyes gleaming with joy. His body flew up, his chef robe fluttering in the wind. He caught the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. His other hand opened the lid of the bamboo tube, taking a swig of the good wine. Then, he waved his hand, and the wine disappeared. It's not easy for you to find the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. Then, I'll show you my skill. Slowly landing on the stove, Wenren Shang looked at Bu Fong indifferently. In the glutton god's building, a tender cheer arose. It was for Wenren Shang, the ponytail girl in his restaurant. She was a little sad, squeezing into the crowd, waving her arms and cheering from a distance. The corners of Wenren Shang's mouth rose, and his eyes moved. A moment later, Bu Fong furrowed his brows. He found that Wenren Shang's aura had changed. At this moment, he became so sharp like a lion that had just woken up. The dazzling light was incomparably resplendent, and a dazzling white kitchen knife appeared in his hand, spinning. Sunlight knife. It's Grandmaster Chui's sunlight knife. Wow, it's a famous knife, worthy of being one of the top 10 chefs of the Tablet of Gluttony. His first move isn't ordinary. Oh my God, Do we even need to compete? As soon as the knife appears, who can compete with it? I'm afraid only the monstrous chefs of the Tablet of Gluttony can do that. The moment the audience saw the sunlight knife, they couldn't help but clamor. Their eyes were filled with excitement and admiration. Bufong looked at the knife, his mind shaken. That knife wasn't ordinary at all. Bufong could feel a flow of intelligence from it. That intelligence frightened Bufong. The dragon bone kitchen knife had intelligence, but Bufong couldn't control it yet. Thus, Bufong was more frightened. Wenren didn't mind the exclamations of the audience. As soon as he held the knife, his aura changed. He became solemn, cautious, and strict. Of course, his confidence was like a mountain pouncing on his face. It was the confidence of a chef. The heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish is poisonous. So, we have to be careful when dealing with it, Wenren said faintly. A moment later, the sunlight knife in his hand spun, slashing the belly of the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. Swish! Blood splashed. The sunlight knife still sparkled, without a drop of blood. The knife light slashed, cleaning the internal organs of the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. People with sharp eyes took a deep breath because they found that the crack on the fish's belly was so small that they couldn't see it. After dealing with the internal organs, the fish's belly was closed, and the whole fish was still vivid and lifelike. Just this move had shocked many people. And then, what shocked people even more was that after Wenren had dealt with the fish, he put the knife on the chopping board the Valley of Gluttony had prepared. Then, he patted the fish with his bare hand. A moment later, when his hand moved away from the fish's body, he pulled out many transparent and sharp fish bones. There was a black thread in the center of the fish bone. It was the place where the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish stored its toxin. If he made a slight mistake, the bones would be cut, and the toxin would spread. Moreover, it wasn't the only place where the toxin was stored. His hand flicked, and the knife spun again. Wenren concentrated on the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. From a distance, green smoke twirled in Bufong's hand. The ancient, black dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand. He slowly played with it. His eyes sparkled as he watched Wenren deal with the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. Chapter 677. Wenren way of processing the fish dazzled people's eyes. Every time his palm patted, fish bones were taken out from the slits between his fingers. He casually tossed the fish bone to the stove. Of course, besides the bones, there were many other parts of the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish that needed to be processed. The sunlight knife bloomed with dazzling light, sweeping across the fish. Swish! Pieces of fish scales flew out, scattering on the ground. Those fish scales emitted a light like steel, which was extremely sharp. Wenren hand shook, and the fish scales gathered in his hand, hovering around his palm. After one round, he threw them to the table, piling up with the fish bones. Everybody screamed in surprise. Worthy of being a chef from the top 10 of the Tablet of Gluttony. His performance had amazed many people. When he finished processing the fish scales, the light in Wenren eyes changed. He became more serious. He rose his finger, measuring the distance on the fish. After confirming it, the sunlight knife slashed, and the fish split directly. Transparent liquid oozed from it. After continuously slashing the fish, Wenren had made 3 cuts on the fish. Then, he put his hand on the fish's eye, lifting it up. Swish! Clean water was rinsed off. The transparent liquid was also washed clean. Wenren finger moved, touching the glabella of the fish head. A moment later, he pulled, and a black thread was pulled out from the fish head. After taking out this thread, Wenren tense nerves finally relaxed a little. He put the fish down, revealing a smile on his face. At this moment, the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish was completely processed. Wiping the water on his hand, Wenren slowly lifted his head to look at Bufong in the distance, giving him a nod. Did you get it? Everyone was slightly stunned. Many people looked at each other. Wenren movements were too fast, causing them to be a little dazzled. Moreover, the way he processed the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish was very strict. Once he made a mistake, it meant that he failed to process the fish. The fish would become a poisonous ingredient. In a valley of gluttony, there weren't many people who knew how to process the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. However, not many people could be as confident as Wenren Shang. Bu Fong squinted, playing with the dragon bone kitchen knife in his hand. The corners of his mouth rose. I got it 70–80%. Oh, Wenren Shang arched his brows. 70–80%? This kid's eyes aren't bad, Wenren Shang chuckled. He didn't say anything, continuing to process the fish. This time, he didn't continue to process the fish. Instead, he took out a lot of ingredients from under the stove. These ingredients were quite simple, but they all had one thing in common, which was that they were rich in spirit energy. There was a herb that looked like a Ganoderma. After Wenren Shang took it, he swung his knife and cut the stem of the Ganoderma into 3 halves. Then, he smeared the juice on the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. The sunlight knife spun, cutting the ingredients into pieces and placing them around the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. After that, Wenren Shang slashed the sunlight knife on the chopping board. He gently exhaled, flipped his hand, and a bamboo tube appeared in his hand. He opened the lid, and the rich aroma of wine spread out from the bamboo tube. His hand trembled. A large drop of wine flew out of the bamboo tube. Wenren Shang flicked his finger, and the liquor exploded, splashing all over the fish. As if it had been nourished by the rain, the entire fish became vivid and lifelike, as if it had come to life. Bu Fong was still staring at Wenren Shang. He knew what Wenren Shang wanted to do. Steamed fish. Steamed heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. Bu Fong narrowed his eyes. Wenren Shang leisurely threw out a warm red flame from his hand. That flame darted into the stove and burned up. He took a steamer and placed it on the stove. Carefully, he opened the steamer and placed the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish inside. Putting the lid on the steamer, Wenren Shang took a step back. A moment later, he took out the bamboo tube of wine, pouring it into his mouth. "It's your turn, little chef." Wenren Shang drank a mouthful of wine. His face showed that he was enjoying it. He looked at Bu Fong and said, at this moment, people could see what Wenren Shang wanted to cook. Steamed? It was suitable for the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. For the time being, many people were looking forward to Wenren Shang's dish. However, as Wenren Shang said that, people's eyes shifted to Bu Fong. Many people had a playful and disdainful look in their eyes. He was just a little chef, and he wanted to fight against a great chef like Wenren Shang. Just the cooking of the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish was enough to put this kid in a difficult position. Cooking ingredients was also an art, especially this kind of ingredient that couldn't have any mistake. The 6th elder found a place to sit down. He pinched his handlebar mustache, squinting at Bu Fong. He wanted to see if this kid could create more miracles. His knife skill was good, and so was his cooking foundation. However, compared to the chefs on the table of gluttony, he wasn't sure who was better. The celestial saintess sat on the high platform. Her long eyelashes shivered. She looked at Bu Fong, and her eyes seemed to have light. Xiaoyu was so excited, leaning against the chair. The little girl continued to stuff food into her mouth. Her big eyes looked at Bu Fong, full of trust. The heavenly springs saint's son wore a dark face. His cold eyes gazed at Bu Fong. His body couldn't move. Chu Changxing's power was still pressing on his body, which made him feel so uncomfortable that he wanted to vomit blood. The murderous aura in his heart surged. The surrounding chefs were also watching curiously and playfully. Ouyang Qinfeng squinted, his eyes filled with hope. At this moment, everybody's focus was on Bu Fong. Jun Qingxiao looked at Bu Fong with admiration. How could this little chef be so calm? Didn't he have a little bit of fear? No matter what, he was facing the top 10 chefs of the tablet of gluttony. So it's my turn now. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth rose, and the golden dragon bone kitchen knife he was playing with suddenly tightened his grip. In the next moment, his gaze became extremely sharp. His hand shook, and a velvet rope emerged to tie his hair. Then, Bufong started to face the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. Wenren Shang's way of dealing with the fish. Bufong watched. Although Wenren Shang moved fast, it didn't stop Bufong from capturing the key points. With a clanging sound, the dragon bone kitchen knife slashed across the stove, producing a sharp sound. Swish, the saber moved as fast as lightning and cut through the fish's belly, causing a thin cut to appear on the fish's belly. After cleaning the fish's belly, Bufong's hand shook, and the fish soared up into the sky. The cut on the fish's belly looked as if it was sewn up. Looking at Bufong's actions, many people were slightly stunned. Some people sucked in a breath of cold air, and their eyes were filled with horror. This knife skill, this way of dealing with the fish, wasn't different from Wenren Shang's. This little chef's knife skill, he could follow Wenren Shang's rhythm. Oh my God! Many people were horrified. The sixth elder pinched his beard, squinting. You haven't seen how terrifying this kid's knife skill is. Thud! The fish fell on the stove. Bufong furrowed his brows, slapping the fish meat with his palms. Bufong took out the fish bones, dropping them from the slits between his fingers. It was basically the same movement. There was no difference at all. Even the way he dealt with the fish was similar. This fellow could understand Chef Wenren Shang's way of dealing with the fish. Wenren Shang had already stopped drinking and was looking at Bufong in a daze. The dragon bone kitchen knife spun in Bufong's hand. Eventually, he held it. Green smoke dispersed, disappearing. The heavenly mountain spirit spring water flowed, washing the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. Bufong pinched the fish head, taking out a black line. So it's done, right? Bufong pinched the fish with one hand, looking at the springy flesh of the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish. He couldn't help but smirk. What do you want to cook? Do you want to make steamed, heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish? You won't be able to defeat me that way, Wenren Shang said lazily as he regained his composure and drank another mouthful of wine. Bufong looked at Wenren Shang strangely. Why do I want to make steamed fish? Then, under people's surprised gazes, Bufong took out an undying paper. Paper? What did he want to do? Why did he take out a piece of paper? Was he going to use paper to cook? Many people were a little skeptical. What kind of dish could he cook with paper? The dragon bone kitchen knife appeared one more time. Spirit herbs and ingredients flew out. Bufong's knife skill flashed. In just a blink of an eye, all the ingredients were processed, falling on the paper. Bufong placed the heaven-swallowing spiritual spot fish on the paper. Light flashed in his hand, and a white jade jar emerged. As soon as this jar appeared, many people were bewildered. Xiaoyu shivered. He craned his neck, gawking as he smacked his lips. Was it the ice-hard jade urn wine? The heavenly secret Sanus's eyes had a divine light. Bufong opened the lid of the white jade jar. Instantly, a thick wine aroma diffused, covering the entire gluttony square. Everybody couldn't help but change their countenance. That wine aroma had the aura of ice and fire. This wine wasn't ordinary at all. Just smelling it made people yearn for it. Swish, swish. Bufong poured the clear wine on the fish. After that, he shook his hand, and the paper was folded, turning into a paper bag. Wenren Shang's eyes focused. He was so skeptical. What kind of trick was that? The sixth elder was a little bewildered. He had never seen such a cooking method before. Not only them, but many people were also bewildered. However, Bufong didn't mind their bewilderment. He took a step back, opening his mouth. Instantly, a cluster of gold and red flames gushed out. When the sixth elder saw the flames, his face shivered. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.